We're live. Oh my God.
Are we live?
We're live, boys and girls.
So
And
the first thing I do will be on the internet forever.
oh no. Let's see. What are we going to do now that we're live? We have responsibilities. Somebody has some wind on their microphone.
They
Yeah,
must
it's
be
probably
jogging.
Mike
What's
or
that?
Scott.
No,
Live.
no,
We have
not me.
responsibilities. Somebody
Oh,
has some wind on their microphone.
My dog might
Yeah,
be
it's
rubbing up
dog,
against the.
Or
What's that?
Scott.
I think my dog.
No,
oh, hold on,
We
hold
have
on.
responsibilities. Somebody has.
So I've been talking and talking, and I had. Oh, you muted me, didn't you? Production values. All I hear is breathing because you're muted, Speed.
Oh, what the fuck? Who muted you?
I'm not even breathing.
No, I heard you
Think
breathing
about wrong.
because he was Speed was muted. So
Yeah. You had dog issues, which are kind of like
yeah,
mommy
I
issues.
did have dog issues. He was rubbing up against the computer, which has the mic, which it's the old story. It's a classic.
It's a classic.
It's a classic. They'll write poems about it someday.
Yes. I'm going to switch
Yeah,
to
tapping on the device that has the microphone.
Yeah.
issue.
Should know how to do that. Oh, there's an ought. Can you derive
It's an
that
ought.
from an is? Can you derive that from an is?
Depends on your goals, man. To me,
Mm-hmm. I think you can. Anyway, Sal Cordova is going over a paper, which I don't know how Sal ever found this paper. I don't know what he was Googling for to find the paper. It was a mystery, but I'm gonna show you the paper and see if you can figure out what he was Googling for.
is it the author of that student's textbook?
I don't know what he was Googling for. The name of the paper is What's Wrong with Evolutionary Biology. What do you think Sal was Googling for?
Trying to find reasons.
He was trying to find Welch or reason, or he was trying to learn more about evolutionary biology.
I don't think learn more is the idea. Learn maybe more about creationist views of what's wrong with evolution or something.
Yeah. And he's got this kid on there that's in college, I think, for evolutionary biology. And this kid just doesn't believe a word his teachers are telling him. And he's going on about, they found, who was it, Haeckel, the one with the embryos? He found it in a 2011 textbook or something like that. Anyway, this stream, I think, is going on right now over on Cell's Evidence and Reasons channel. And I linked it all. And they're just hee-hawing over everything they find in this paper. Like they found the thing about more than one common ancestor. And they're like, see, creationism. Everything's coming up creationism. And what else did they find? Oh, the guy is saying basically that evolutionary biology needs a revamp. And then Cell is saying, oh, yeah, it's because they neglect things. Because evolutionary biologists neglect things like the evolution of eukaryotic cells, right? Go look that up on Scholarpedia.
In case they haven't figured it out already, Ian Chen wants to know who is Dumb and Dumber supposed to be.
I don't know. It just came to me today while I was putting together the video. I have no idea who I'm referring to. I don't. But which is which? That's an interesting question. But but I would never call one of our creationist YouTube buddies that. It just popped into my head. Shit pops into my head, and I just happened to have been watching an Evidence and Reasons video.
Gee, it's weird how that happens, but yeah, I know what you mean.
Well, maybe one of them reminded me of one of the actors, like
could be. They could sort of resemble
Jim Carrey. Yeah. Sal does look like Jim Carrey a lot.
Of course, that's a matter of subjective opinion.
Yeah, it's just subjective. I think it's an ought. Anyway, so what are we going to talk about, gentlemen? should we talk about this paper?
Well, it's in the paper. What is wrong with evolutionary biology, and do we agree?
There have been periodic claims that evolutionary biology needs urgent reform. This is papers from 2016, and we've been reading a whole lot of stuff about the cell is not a machine and different paradigms and the extended synthesis and biosemiotics and information and a million other fucking things that biologists are not neglecting at all.
Now, just to back up, who's the author again? Was it John Welch?
John Welch, yeah.
John J. Welch.
Can you check him out? And see
I'm Googling him right now.
Okay. And this was published in Biology Philosophy or I don't know what magazine that is exactly. Philosophy of Biology, probably. And that's its code name. So anyway, he lists a bunch of things, a bunch of paradigm changes for evolutionary biology. Hey, Leo. Way to go on the physics video yesterday.
Thank you.
Yep.
How are you doing with the prep for the debate?
Just fine. I had a little bit of prep last night, so I had Snake and Drace were offering criticism, so that was nice.
Very cool. And
yes,
that was
Ian. Yes, Ian. Steve McLeyer is a troll. I don't care if you like or dislike Steve McRae. You're not going to come onto this channel and be a fucking ass in the side chat. And if you do it, I'm timing you the fuck out.
Who? Steve McLeyer? Oh,
yeah. You don't have to like Steve, but you're not going to come here and be an ass and be a troll.
All he said was me and Cheshire. Did I miss something?
Well, yeah. The account is a troll account.
Yeah, no, I get that, but all they said
so that's
was
why I timed them out, because it's a troll account.
All right, whatever.
It's somebody that's not here to listen or engage. It's somebody that's here to be a fucking ass. No, not on this channel. Go someplace else.
Yeah, it's kind of like I think we're gonna have rules here. We're gonna pull a Gavin on people that turn into assholes and stuff. And unless we decide to go full asshole on them, then it's fair. And I mean, I've never said anything like I've never called anybody dumb and dumber or anything like that. Right?
You call me dumb all the time.
Who are you talking about? Who's dumb and who's dumber?
I had nobody in mind when I picked that.
Right.
I was just thinking about a movie. And that's what came to my mind. I gotta pick a show picture, right? And I just free associate. And
right.
5 hours, Leo. Are you ready?
What?
I said 5 hours. Are you ready?
Dude, I've been ready. Every time I think about how I'm gonna get like straight owned with facts and logic, I get a little chub.
Okay, it says John J. Welch is in the Department of Genetics, University of Cambridge, whatever, UK. But
sounds pretty real, like a real dude to me.
Yeah, so he's in his biology and philosophy is the name of the journal. So I guess he's along the lines of Daniel Nicholson, just thinking about the state of the science.
Okay, so he says claims that evolutionary biology is flawed or importantly incomplete are as old as the field.
Oh yeah.
Criticisms are characterized by their diversity at any given time. Okay, so yep. Pigliucci, Muller, those guys are from way back. Waddington, Bateson, we've been reading all those guys. This does not mean that the critics are wrong. Both the diversity and the persistence of criticisms might be explained by intransigence and lack of ambition in the field. Intolerance and narrow-mindedness of some of the advocates. But anyway, what else does he say? It's been argued here that discontent is better understood as stemming from a few inescapable properties of living things, which lead to a disappointment with evolutionary biology and a nagging feeling that reform must be overdue. And I think he's making the case for, there are certain weird things that happen in lineages, and there are issues, and there are things that make any model or any law you come up with for biology will ultimately fail. Because shit gets real in biology. It's complicated for all, let's see, special criticism directed at subfield is not surprising, but it is a pity. Really. With its inherent focus on plastic phenotypes and whole organisms, its common focus on sociality and cooperation, deep roots in equality. He goes on and he lists it. He's a lister. Anyway, we might look at this paper at some point.
Well, he does mention creationists at least twice in the paper. I did a search for Bible, then I did for creationists, and he basically talks about how they make an argument from ignorance by saying that something else must have been involved in the creation or in the evolutionary process because it's just things are too complicated, features and things like that are just too complicated to have been accounted for by natural selection. And then the second one I didn't get a chance to read because I'm trying to save it to my OneDrive.
Must also have played a creative role. This argument from our ignorance stems from Mivart, but it is not restricted to creationists. Okay. Yeah, so Nagel and Orr and Papineau and Waddington famously, have their, and I think that's kind of the beginning of the extended synthesis. So that's where it popped up. So it's not a surprising paper, but worth a read.
Okay, hold on. He's back. Do you want me to ban him again?
No.
No, not unless he starts trolling and bringing up people that aren't at all associated with this channel.
I mean, I would like to say that he said, "I'm a pawn, not a king," which is a Steve McRae reference.
I'm not a pawn. I'm a king in this game.
Okay, if you go to page 274 of the paper.
Rawr.
All right, then, whatever.
Rawr. Okay, 274.
Down towards the bottom, just up. There you go. There's another statement. If criticism of evolutionary biology is inevitable, why grouse about it? It is easy to habituate to misleading alarm calls and churlish to complain about peripheral ideas, which by definition have little influence on what most scientists do. However, claims that evolutionary biology is misguided or importantly incomplete are not harmless, but actively hinder progress in the field. Indeed, they do so in several ways. First, the claims misrepresent the field to the wider public. It is unfair to use guilt by association. Many fine studies are cited on creationist websites, but a field that urgently needs reform is a field in crisis, blah, blah, blah. So that's just a passing reference. So,
yeah.
But what fine papers are cited on creationist websites? Is it papers like this and others that they just
they
extrapolate strange conclusions?
They cherry pick from all kinds of really good papers.
Yeah. And there's a pretty good set of references to dive into.
Such claims find an eager audience. Okay, the guys reading it right now over on Cell's site are that kind of an eager audience. They're
I hope they have little napkins to wipe the saliva from their chins as they salivate.
Yeah, such claims find an eager audience among those who reject the scientific consensus on other grounds. I really want to review that video and find out what they say when they read that part.
Well, that'll be good for tomorrow's weather report, maybe.
Is this the paper that's being read on Sal's channel right now?
Right, yeah.
What was it called again? Something about problems in biology?
Yeah, what's wrong with evolutionary biology?
What's wrong with evolutionary biology? We were trying to figure out what Cell Googled to find that paper.
Okay, did anyone see Otangelo's latest comment? Evolution is an argument for atheists to deny God. There is not one real piece of evidence for common ancestry and the tree of life.
Except the fossil record and the whole of genetics.
You know how you go on buses and trains and there's just a kind of a stinky smell of urine in the air and you don't know why or where it's coming from? That's what Otangelo is to our live chats. He just comes in and just spews out stuff. So there we go.
There we
For
go.
one thing, he just make stupid comments about people's thoughts and intentions. If you want to know what motivates an atheist, ask the atheist, and then don't be a dick and disbelieve what they tell you. You're not a licensed psychologist, so you have very little need or qualification to psychologize us.
I'm trying to think of who we've had on the channel recently that's kind of a dick and he's always criticizing atheists. Can't remember his name though.
It doesn't come to my mind.
Nope.
Here's Stephanie. Hello, Stephanie. So nice to hear from you again.
Hi, Stephanie, our resident
Oh.
poet.
Sometimes you walk into a room or maybe even onto a public transportation and there's the smell of roses and flowers in the air. That's what it's like when Stephanie comes on.
Exactly.
Roses don't smell good, though.
Okay, pick another flower. Honeysuckle? The smell of honeysuckle in the spring is beautiful.
Honeysuckle's wonderful.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of like that with Stephanie.
Yeah. Yep, we love it. Oh, I don't know. Let's see what else is going on today. There's a the SFT's been putting out a video every night. And
Doesn't he have a job?
I don't think he does work. No, he can't be. Standing in poop. Let's see, what does he got here? The Age of the Earth. Oh, he had a debate last night with, and you guys are all on an after show at David's channel, right?
Sure as hell was.
Kind of big. So
We're all Tangelo rage quit because I pointed out that it was an open mic, but he wanted a one-on-one discussion. And then somebody's like, dude, if you want a one-on-one discussion with somebody, don't come to an open mic. Schedule a one-on-one discussion with them. Have them on your channel.
who
Didn't
do
he
you
run
want?
away yesterday?
Well, no, because he was making some statement. He was asking Jordan all these. He was pretty much trying to dominate the discussion and turn it into an irreducible complexity discussion, which is not what we were talking about. And so he was just like running all these questions by Jordan, the guy who debated Hovind, and just trying to like ask him, all these engineering questions about the cell being a machine and this, that, and the other, and the same shit that he's been corrected on 1,500 times. And then Immutable Destiny made a question. He's like, well, I'm not talking to you. And I was like, all right, everybody, hold on. David, isn't this an open mic? And David's like, yes. And so Immutable's like, yeah, this is an open mic. So if I want to comment on something you said, I can. And then he left.
Yeah, he didn't want to talk to Immutable. Why is he mad at Immutable again? I asked Immutable.
I don't know. Maybe because Immutable's corrected him 1.5 million times. He seems to get really mad at people who know more than he does and correct his bullshit.
You can kind of say that about all of them.
Okay, I was just about to say a common theme amongst creationists.
Common theme. Yeah. So, what kind of software were we using to draw last night? What was that? It looked like calligraphy.
What?
On your video stream.
I just
Quantum physics.
Adobe Draw, I think. Hold on, let me make sure I got the program right. Yeah, Adobe Draw.
Isn't that like a subscription?
Nope.
Nope. You can actually get it.
Yeah, just download.
Let me see. And it's an iPad-y kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I do. I love drawing programs.
I don't even know if it's actually drawing it. Nope, it's not because I need to select my pen.
Our company is selling Linea to back to some of the co-creators. Icon Factory's buying it. Let me see here. Adobe Draw.
Yeah, I like it. It's a pretty good program. Of course, I didn't want to download something that I haven't heard of, and Adobe I know I can trust, so that's why I downloaded that.
Ooh.
I'm really, really weary about like certain apps and downloading certain things just because you never know what the fuck's going to happen if you download something you've never heard of.
My son's worked at Adobe on Lightroom for quite a while, and some of our partners work there currently. Adobe Draw, Adobe Illustrator.
Yeah, mine is Adobe Illustrator Draw. I don't know.
It says Get.
For the app, it just says underneath the app, it just says Adobe Draw.
It's free. You can't beat that price. Guys,
What?
we need a direction for the weather report.
We need a what?
A direction.
I don't know.
Don't you have a direction?
I don't. I don't follow the creationist stuff as well.
Hey, do we want to? Is it possible to like that crawl lecture that David Deemer did to play the section of that video? It's like starting at minute 39. I just find that so fascinating. I wanted to put that crawl lecture series of Assembling Life by David Deemer.
Okay. Do you have the link?
I can get it for you.
It would be handy. It would be handy if you did that.
It just came to my mind because we are a directionless broadcast today.
We are.
I was hoping Immutable Destiny would be in, because I know he wanted to give some tips and tricks on things to touch on.
I didn't blame myself. It just seems like he's quit appearing so much since I've started regularly coming on. So I apologize.
You think he hates you?
Well, I don't know if that's something that he's offended by. So I apologize, Immutable. Okay, I put the link in private chat. I'll also put it in the live chat.
The crawl lecture. Let's see.
And then move it to starting at minute 39, and then it goes on for about 5 or 10 minutes. It doesn't have to be very long, but it's just a fascinating piece about a lab experiment, preliminary lab experiment that was done. I think they're still working on it.
A lab experiment gone wrong.
Ooh, I hope those might be pretty cool. Maybe we should do that. Find a collection of videos on lab experiments gone wrong.
Oh,
people running out of the lab, screaming, clutching their eyeballs and things.
There's some really crazy motherfuckers that do lab experiments. That one Russian guy, God, he does some incredible. I mean, he blows shit up. He blows himself up. He was testing salt and electricity with battery cables, and he just shocked the shit out of himself. It was really cool. Yeah, it's hyena number 4.
Fucking Adam. Yeah. Creationism describes reality pretty accurately. Plenty of deluded people.
Okay, I'm trying to catch up here to reality. Is this real?
I really don't appreciate reality so much.
Are we really live?
Is reality is a fickle bitch.
Why don't you appreciate reality? It loves you.
I don't know about that. I really don't know about that.
Okay, guys, is this actually happening right now?
No, we're brains in a vat.
Good. Okay, you want me to play this?
Are we talking like Futurama style, or what's going on?
No, we're literally brains in a vat. Our skull is a vat.
Brains in a vat.
Yes, our skull is a vat.
Our Vlat. Okay, should I play this? Foreskin? Afskin?
What is this?
Okay. I mean, yeah, whatever. Yeah, you might want to full screen it.
Who is this guy?
That's David Deemer, author of the hypothesis paper we're going to comment on later in future broadcasts, paper trails. And he's that hot spring hypothesis of the origins of life.
Okay.
It's a fascinating lecture to watch.
This series. It's like a window onto Silicon Valley for our campus. So much goes on over there.
Yeah, minute number 39.
And it seems to inhibit.
Really?
Seems to inhibit as much.
Unless you want to watch the whole thing.
Website. No. We're also doing something a little bit different tonight. We're live streaming this lecture. We've been recording them in the past and posting them on YouTube, and that will be continued. But this lecture will actually be a live stream, and we hope to continue that in the future. So one of the reasons Rafe and I created this lecture series was to show big ideas that Santa Cruz researchers are exploring. Tonight's speaker is a man of many big ideas. Our first lecture 3 years ago featured Mark Atkinson on nanopore technology and DNA sequencing. Mark got his start as a postdoc in David Deemer's lab. Tonight, David is going to take us back to the origins of life. David?
Thank you so much. And thank both of you, George and Rafe, for sponsoring this series. It's like a window onto Silicon Valley for our campus. So much goes on over there, but there's this big hill, and it seems to inhibit as much interaction as can be. Well, the story I'm going to tell you tonight begins with just what you see up here in the screen. And what you see is something that you've seen all your life, the Milky Way, but there's something else there that I want to call attention to because it's very much part of what I want to talk to you about tonight. And that is all of this dark stuff. You can't see that with the naked eye very well, but if you do a time exposure, you see this dark material hiding the stars. And that dark material is the ashes of stars that have gone through their lifetime and exploded as supernova and as nova and strewn the elements that have been synthesized in those stars into the surrounding space. So that material then gathers into vast clouds, light years in diameter. And in those vast clouds, and I'm going to show you one right now, in those vast clouds, we have formations called constellations. And here's one that probably most of you know. You've seen the Orion Nebula. Orion was a mythological hunter, and this is Orion's belt. Here's a hand up here. That's Betelgeuse, a red giant. If that were our star, it would have engulfed our solar system all the way out
It's a
to
red
near
hypergiant,
Jupiter.
by the way.
It's huge, 300 times the size of our star. And you cannot see the red color very well with the naked eye. But again, in a photograph, it's very clearly a red giant. This is Orion's belt here. And what I want to call attention to is right down here. You can
Orion's
see that
penis.
easily with binoculars. That is a nebula that is made of that stardust that I showed you just a moments ago. Let's take a closer look using the Hubble telescope that goes around the Earth and lets us get a clear image at much higher magnification. So this is the Orion Nebula as you see it by the eye, and here it is through the Hubble. It's absolutely extraordinary to realize that within the Hubble, within this nebula, we can actually see new solar systems developing. So each of those little tiny squares now magnified into larger magnified structures. If you look in the center, you can see little glowing white objects that are in fact a proto-sun, a new solar system. So that's what we
We've
looked
never
like
seen a star
5
form.
billion years ago. A sun just starting to glow, no planets yet, this circle, this disk of dust and gas gathered from the nebula around, and every solar system that we know about would have formed by that process, including ours. So that's pretty amazing. That's really something that we could only work out if we had a telescope like the Hubble that could magnify as you see that. So what I want to tell you about, though, is how can life begin on the Earth and other habitable planets? And I'm including Mars in this because the Earth and the Mars 4 billion years ago were similar. We both had oceans, sort of shallow seas on Mars. We both had volcanoes. There's volcanoes on Mars that we can still see today. So life can begin, but I'm not going to tell you how life did begin. That's the wrong verb. We will never know how life did begin because we can't go back in time 4 billion years. But with a proper simulation, we can make steps one by one that make sense toward the origin of cellular structures that could then evolve into what we now know as life. And that's the story that I'm going to tell you about tonight. So the first thing that we'll begin with a very simple question, and that is, what about the elements of life? Where do they come from? Carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, phosphorus, and sulfur. And the elemental abbreviation is unpronounceable, CHONPS. So if we take a cell, a living cell, and break it up and analyze the atoms in it, those 6 are something like well over 90, probably closer to 99% of the elements in the structures of a living cell, including our cells. This is what we're made of. So what you want to know now is, where did they come from? And in fact, let me tell you something that you probably had never realized, and that
What
is
the-
that
Damn it.
hydrogen, which is, of course, the H2O circulating in our blood, hydrogen in our bodies is 13.7 billion years old. 70% of the atoms in your body go back to the beginning of the universe, because that hydrogen never got up in star formation and never got turned into helium by the fusion reactions. So it's nice to know that we're 13.7 billion years old. I take comfort in that. The others, carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, phosphorus, sulfur, they're probably only 5 to 7 billion years old. The reason is that in the early universe, right at the Big Bang, there was really only mostly hydrogen and a little sprinkling of helium as hydrogen began to fuse into helium. Everything else you see up there was made by what is called stellar nucleosynthesis in the stars as they go through their lifetime. So let's take a look at that. Here is a nice image of something that's a very beautiful lake right here on Earth. And I'm going to trace the elements of our Earth and then go on to the elements of life. So the biogenic elements, CONPS, notice that I left out hydrogen now, those 5, they are made in stars. We know how they're made. They're in our sun. They're being made as we speak in other stars. So that is certainly where the elements of life come from. Then we have that stuff going into, there's the stars with that arrow. Then we have another thing happening right now, and that is a delivery of matter to the Earth from our sun. The auroras that we see so beautifully in the northern latitudes are in fact protons and electrons, a solar wind hitting the upper atmosphere. So we are accumulating stuff from our star, the sun, all the time as we speak. Another place that we accumulate stuff is the silicon and oxygen, SiO2, that came into the Earth from the from asteroid-like objects called planetesimals. So that's where how the Earth was built up. We had these collisional processes in the early solar system in which structures the size range of asteroids just kind of grew and grew and grew until they formed the rocky planets, and then out in the gas giants, that we had a little bit different process going on, but certainly our Earth accumulated that way. And the reason we know that is because it's still happening. We see meteorites coming in. There's a meteorite and it's delivered some silicon and oxygen to the Earth's atmosphere. Then it sort of floats down as a kind of a dust. So it's still going on. Then we have more silicon and oxygen delivered by this primary accretion of the Earth, silicate minerals. And finally, we have hydrogen and oxygen also delivered mostly by these asteroid-sized planetesimals, and also a little bit by by comets. When we have looked at comets in terms of their composition, we think that comets made up about 10% of the water out there in the ocean, just being delivered during the accretion of the Earth. Accretion just as a word meaning the coming together under gravitational forces. So here we have a whole bunch of elements, some of them caught up in life. The only one that isn't in life is silicon. We're made of stardust, said Carl Sagan, and that's the truth. Here we are, living structures, and the elements of our body, the heavier elements, were at one time all in the center of stars. Stars went through their lifetime, they went through a nova, they exploded, that stuff went out, made the molecular dust that I showed you, and we ended up with life on the Earth. So that covers the elements. Here's a little summary of what I just told you. There's a solar system in making. Here's an actual particle of stardust. This is off of the comet. We can collect these little particles. We call them interplanetary dust particles. And what I want you to show you is
You guys want
out
to
in
watch
space,
more of
there's
this,
a
or
thin layer of ice,
Sure,
ice
why
on
not?
these things.
Well, what I was interested
from all
in
the
was
stuff
started at minute
circulating in the
number 39.
Oh, I thought you said 139.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. No, minute number 39 or
Uh,
so.
There you
Yeah,
go.
but, start right there at that bus.
Right there.
into
Yeah, that's it right there.
the
Oh,
crater.
perfect.
And believe it or not, we're going to climb down into that place.
uh-oh.
This is an active volcano. A couple
Don't
years
do
after
it.
we left, blew up. So we had to pick a good time to go. It's still okay. So this is water hitting the hot rocks down there and exploding with a constant roar into the air. So we had to find our way down through all that boulder-strewn landscape. And there I am, down at the bottom of this crater, taking a sample of the kind of boiling mud out of that pit. The Russians told us that they had lost a grad student into that pit, some years ago, and I was pretty careful after learning that. So I took this back to campus and analyzed it, and there's not much there. We did not find any organics. So I wanted to cover my bet, and I decided to find a pool all of my own, and this is my Darwin's hot little puddle, and I decided to pour a prebiotic soup into that pond to see what happened.
Foreskin.
So it was just in the dark. We didn't know a thing would happen.
Foreskin. Well, I just can't believe that you think all life came from rock soap. All right, we can continue.
Okay.
But this was the start of everything I'm going to tell you. This is in 2004, I think. So that contains 4 amino acids, 4 nucleobases of DNA and RNA. It's got an amphiphilic molecule.
Okay, this is exactly how God did it. He had a beaker of, it looks like cum, and poured it into this
Or rock
pool.
soup.
God,
He cooked up rock soup and then dumped it onto the earth and was like, ta-da! There's life.
Called myristic acid, 14 carbon fatty acid, got glycerol, phosphate, and the pool is about pH 3. That's acidic as the pH of lemon juice, just to give you a sense of what that's about. So we would then sample that pool every few minutes, every few hours, and even next day to see what happened to all this stuff. And I won't give you all the details. I can tell you where to read about it, but what was exciting is that we saw white stuff within minutes.
Oh, yeah, I bet you did see some white
around
stuff.
the edge of the pool.
You can't have life without that white
This
stuff,
idea
you
came
know.
that maybe life could begin by the wet-dry cycles. That white stuff is the membranous material that I put in, the amphiphiles, soap-like molecules. You could predict that it should form frothy soap. It should form membranes, and it did. But the idea of the wet-dry cycles came from that moment. So, with apologies to Michelangelo, I think that might be where life began. So we came home and I said, I want to simulate that. And we built a simulation chamber. This is what you do in science. You can't go to Kamchatka anytime you want. So you try to bring Kamchatka to you. So I built this chamber. And what you see is a aluminum disc that circles very slowly, about once or twice an hour. It's got these little wells that hold a glass vial with our reaction mixture. It gets dried here and here by a stream of carbon dioxide coming from here, and it gets wet by water coming into here and here from this little pump that pumps in the water. So it's a wet-dry cycle in the laboratory simulation. And of course, it got a heat source. These are 2 laboratory hot plates. So here is, I'm getting toward the end of my talk now. Here is our experiment. This is unpublished. We haven't dared to try to put this out yet because we
Foreskin.
it. Kind of a.
Yep.
Okay, I need an interpretation of what these TMPs are. He mentions them, and it's going to be important later on when you see another slide after they show the results of their initial preliminary experiment there. What is this TMP? And I guess it's represented by the letter T over here. Does that make sense?
Monophosphate?
Hold on, quick question. Is that T repeating infinitely? Because if it is, what letter comes after T? U. Then it's just U. Wow, you guys didn't get that joke? You fucking pathetic.
Oh, okay. That was a joke.
I was
T repeating infinitely is U.
It went kind of by me, to be honest, Leophilus. I blame myself.
I had my thinky cap on.
So speed, either speed or top dog, because one of you two is gonna know what the fuck are TMPs, because I don't know.
And I know CRISPR is in the chat.
Thymidine monophosphate.
I think that's what it is. But notice, that string of T's, and then I kind of want to know what point he's making with that, and then you'll see where he has it linked up to some what are those little basic alphabets that make up genomes or
Really quick, who's the guy giving this talk? What's his name?
David Deemer.
David W. Deemer. All right.
Deemer and Dahmer. Okay.
Oh,
Hold on, hold on, just a quick old second here.
So what did CRISPR say?
So
Thymidine monophosphate, or
I wanted to say really quick, because Otangelo's like, this guy has no clue how complex it is to go from RNA to DNA, like Otangelo knows, because he doesn't. This guy is a pseudoscientist. So a little background knowledge on David W. Deemer. Deemer went on to earn a PhD in physiological chemistry in 1965 at the Ohio State University School of Medicine. Before that, he was awarded a full scholarship to Duke University, where he completed a bachelor's degree in chemistry. His advisor, his PhD advisor, was David Cornwell, a lipid biochemist. So Deemer focused on calcium interactions with fatty acid and phospholipid monolayers, finishing in 1965.
well, okay, are we ready?
So the idea that he's a pseudoscientist is the dumbest fucking thing I've ever heard, especially when it's coming from someone with literally no degrees relevant to what the person is talking about.
Who said he was a pseudoscientist?
Otangelo.
Otangelo, wrong Tangelo.
What?
Otangelo pulled a wrong Tangelo because
Where did wrong Tangelo say that?
This guy has no clue how complex it is to go from RNA to DNA. This guy is a pseudoscientist, a fool. What I don't get is if Otangelo knows more than these actual PhD chemists and molecular biologists, why doesn't he publish his research and overturn what they're saying? Why hasn't he done that? Why does he bitch and complain in the comments section on videos on YouTube? Why isn't he giving talks at the National Academy of Sciences? Why doesn't he go to fucking Harvard and, I don't know, have a conversation with the PhDs and present his work and work with them to get it published and peer reviewed and overturn the consensus and then go get his Nobel Prize? Could it be because he has no fucking clue what he's talking about? Probably.
The guy does lab work. He goes to Yellowstone. He goes to Greenland. Where examples of these hot springs coming from a volcano exist, and he does experiments there in the field. I don't know how you get more scientific than that. And then he brings it back in and tries to do lab-based work based on work done out in the field. So that's so wrong, Otangelo.
Oh my God. And 0.01 cents in Brazil is what? Worth like 1/1,000,000th of what it is here?
We need a wah, wah, wah soundtrack.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, we need a soundboard. I'm still trying to find out.
I think pseudoscientist is one of those projection things. They just get so tired of science-based YouTubers revealing their stuff as being pseudoscience.
Yeah.
And so now he's just putting it. It's I'm rubber, you're glue kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it's just sad. I mean, if you want an example of a scientist, there you go. That's what science does. And it's not good enough for some reason. I wonder what the motivation is to talk and think like that.
Anyway, he put this basically a nucleoside, which is the building block of DNA, and he ended up with a string of DNA. So,
well, the question is, can it work? Does it work? And then let's continue. If nobody else has a statement to make, and
an agenda.
See what the results are.
I'll bet Danny's got an agenda or two. But anyway, we could go on.
Complicated experiment.
Did you just say that Danny was agender? Are you agender, Danny?
Danny has a gender.
I'm unfortunately a man.
A gender or two.
I'm a man.
We put in
a gender. I have two genders.
Nucleotides of DNA called
okay, do not interrupt.
TMP.
Professor Green,
Anytime there's a
23
fight in my
wet-dry
school,
cycles.
I
Horse man.
identify as a
Prediction
woman.
was that
What?
Anytime there's a
What,
fight in my
Andy?
school, I identify as a woman.
Yeah, that's smart.
No, don't hit me. I'm fragile.
Yeah, but I've heard that doesn't help much in high school these days. The girls bat it out as well as the boys.
You know, it's funny. In my 5 years of teaching, I've never seen a fight.
Yeah,
You're at the wrong school, buddy.
I don't think I saw maybe one fight in my entire high school. You know,
I saw a
Isn't-
few break out, but
isn't
Okay.
that common?
Speed, I have a question. How many times has Otangelo been corrected on the Kunin quote that, well, the origins of life field is a
Oh
failure?
my God, is he doing it again? Oh,
Yeah,
Tango.
he's doing it again. I can't help but just laugh at this point. I can't. It's just,
Oh my God. Otangelo.
I'm pretty sure you pulled cites from the book that he is quoting from to correct him on the quote that he's pulling from the book that you were quoting from to correct him on that quote from that book.
Yep. I'm not
get
going
to a movie theater quite a bit early for whatever reason, and they're doing this trivia game up on the screen. Question answer, play some music, do a commercial, question answer, and it starts to repeat itself, and you got there way too early.
Yeah.
That's how it feels with Otangelo and his copy and paste patrol.
Yep.
Okay,
Tangelo. Ask again?
Yeah.
Yes.
Just asking the fuck out of this.
we should see it form a polymer composed completely of TMP because that's all that's there. It had to work. So the question is, can we make this happen in the laboratory? And here's the evidence. Now, this is the only technical slide I'm going to show you. And you've probably never seen anything like this in your life.
Okay,
but, I'll
really
kind of explain it to
quick,
you.
foreskin.
So we had a gel.
Did you hear that, Otangelo? This is going to be the only technical slide, so make sure you pay really, really close attention. All right, buddy? Pay really close attention to the actual PhD who actually knows what he's actually talking about actually.
I'm pretty sure we could get his email for Otangelo so he could directly communicate with him.
Well, it's on the hypothesis paper. I suggest that Otangelo download the hypothesis paper and start reading and stop when he finds Deemer's email address, and then maybe continue reading.
No, he won't do that. Well, he might continue till he finds a quote, a juicy little quote. Like, this is really hard, man. For Afskin?
Mizenskin.
And a scan
Like
of
Mizenskin.
radioactive oligomers.
Holy
So
shit.
if we had made a polymer from that monomer, we should be able to label it with a radioactive phosphate at the end and see that labeled material in what is called a gel. So a gel starts up there at the top. See that band up at the top? That's a label that we know is 100 nucleotides in length. And everything else, all these other bands you see, are oligomers separated by a single nucleotide. So this down here is about 40 nucleotides long, 50, 60, 70, 80, and 90. Nobody else has ever made anything like this so simply. All we did was do 4 wet-dry cycles.
Didn't Pinhead Tony say that we've never done more than 21, right? Or didn't James Tour say that?
Something. Who knows?
They claim something somewhat less than 100. So.
Ooh.
Yeah, never say always a big red mark for me. Never and always,
Yeah,
that's
I know.
not science at all.
Yeah,
Our resident molecular biologist is here.
I know. He
Except
is.
he's actually a molecular biologist.
Yeah, he's like a real one.
I'm a fake molecular biologist.
I know. That's okay, Danny. We love you anyway.
I'm a fake physicist, a fakeicist.
Afskin?
Mizenskin. Or would it be portskin? Maybe
Molecular
starboard.
Alchemy is here, another molecular biologist. We have
Oh,
two,
we got
two
fucking
molecular biologists.
3 of them here.
Anybody
And
who is
Three?
a skilled
CRISPR's
anybody who
here,
is a-
molecular's here, Demeter's here.
Is Demeter here? Where is
And
he?
yeah, and Otangelo is now here, is in the chat. Oh, this is gonna
Oh,
get
Demeter's
juicy.
here. We have 3.
So
Okay,
Yeah.
guys.
Please
Talk to
listen and
Otangelo.
explain things to us. Those of you who are skilled, credentialed biochemists. But shall we proceed?
Yeah.
That skin.
Meson skin?
We
Meson?
labeled it, put it in the gel. Then we put it into a little device called the MinION, which let us sequence the DNA. We attach those those oligomers, to a known piece of DNA and put it into our little sequencing device. And look what we got. There's the oligo T. We saw that all throughout these polymers that gave that gel pattern. So that one up on top is like a 20-mer, so it's a little off scale here. This next one is about maybe a 40-mer, so that would be down there. And this is about a 60-mer, which would be up there in the gel. So we think that we have made DNA from scratch that is recognized by enzymes that recognize DNA, and this has never seen anything alive. So we will claim that we have made DNA, and furthermore, we can encapsulate it in lipid membranes.
Foreskin.
There it is.
Right there. Perfect,
We can
perfect spot.
watch
So apparently they just put in thymine. So they just, and then they attached to it. I didn't quite get what they did.
That's
you?
kind of what I was assuming.
Yeah.
Is it that TMP sort of formed like a, this is probably going to be the wrong word to use, but like sort of maybe a template, and then the DNA sort of built off of that.
A monooligomer. And then I think they attached to it with something else, but I'm not sure. That was for purposes of.
Well, they had other compounds in the mixture. Maybe if Demeter's willing, you could throw him a link and let him come up. And this stuff is all preliminary. They're wanting to do a lot more experimentation on that and repeat it more. But maybe what the promise of this preliminary result is.
I've been throwing lots of links.
The reason I called Foreskin is I wanted to say to Otangelo, because before we started playing this, he said, well, they need to start with explaining where RNA and DNA came from. They can't just that's not just a given. So I just wanted to ask Otangelo, were you listening? Did you listen to everything that was just said? Did you understand it? Did you digest it? Are you asking questions? Probably not. They gave, and like Scott said, it's preliminary, but it's still a valid hypothesis, hypothetical explanation for the origin of DNA. But I'm sure it will just be rejected offhand because it doesn't say what I want to hear.
Otangelo.
Demeter, can you join us?
He's probably working.
Yeah, he might be busy. But
I think molecular's working. Demeter's working.
It would be nice to have a legit interpretation of the promise that this seems to have, or the significance it may offer us.
We'd have to listen to that section again and see what he did.
Yeah, and maybe read the hypothesis paper. But
is it linked?
Thank you for throwing this link our way so many weeks ago, Demeter. Basically, the only reason why I saw this is because Demeter threw a link into the live chat at some point, and it just started from there. But this has been very fascinating.
Demeter is actually in a lab right now.
I know.
He is, because he's an actual researcher. Oh, that's funny. Oh, man.
So do you think this guy is in a lab?
We actually talk to researchers. God.
Yeah, I'm going to ask Demeter right now if he wants to answer. Demeter, do you think that David Deemer is a pseudoscientist? Because Otangelo thinks he is.
Yeah.
Would you consider David Deemer a pseudoscientist?
Yeah.
But then again, he may not want to be put on the spot.
What I love is that PhDs who disagree with me are pseudoscientists, but PhDs who only work for creationist organizations, those are the real researchers.
No.
He's like, no.
No.
And by extension, I guess Otangelo thinks Demeter is a pseudoscientist.
Probably.
Which means he probably thinks molecular alchemy is a pseudoscientist. And
if
CRISPR
you're a molecular biologist, you got to design machines like Otangelo. You got to be a machine designer, otherwise you don't realize it's a machine.
I guess our response is pretty clear from Demeter. I hope he hasn't like stroked out in the middle of the lab. A response. No.
So if I were a beaver, would I think the cell was a tree?
Yeah.
It's like arguing that because sticks can form and dam a river all on their own, that anytime you see that, it has to be beavers.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, intelligent beavers.
Really big, angry beavers who know how to mix concrete.
Big, fat, hairy beavers. Yeah. Those are the best kind
But
of beavers.
there's Angelo, I think if you're calling Deemer a pseudoscientist, you need to be believing that Demeter's a pseudoscientist. And do you really believe that? You've talked to the gentleman.
Yeah. Are we
But
asking?
anyway, it only goes on a couple more.
Okay.
Asking.
The DNA in the membrane by staining it with a fluorescent dye. So we're using very simple lipid mixture of a fatty acid called decanoic acid, and it's a thing called a monoglyceride, which just got a glycerol attached to it. So this is at the start. Here's after one cycle, we see a little fluorescence. Here's 2, 3, and 4 cycles. So there's the DNA. We are making DNA from scratch in protocells. They're producing protocells. So that's the main story.
Talkers.
So let me just finish up here. Here's our scenario. Wet-dry cycles in volcanic hot springs concentrate mixtures of lipid vesicles and nucleotides in thin films on mineral surfaces. The wet-dry cycles synthesize nucleic acids, and the lipids then encapsulate the polymers. The polymers then are a kind of a natural experiment. Each little microscopic thing is a kind of a natural test tube. It's the Earth trying to find a way to become alive in a sense. So those are natural experiments, and each one is different from all the rest. And we make billions. Every time we do this, we make billions of these things. Finally, and this is where we are now, we have to find a way to see if we can get those to be selected and evolve. We think we know how to do that. We're looking ahead several years, but this is where we are right now. We thought this was such a good idea that we wrote to the, oh yeah, this one last slide here. This just summarizes everything I've told you about. So here we have the solar system. We have the dust coming down, accumulating, and actually I got little signs here that's synthesized on the dust by that UV light, delivered by infall. It accumulates in these volcanic land masses. It's flushed into hydrothermal cycling area, and then we get these protocells I've just shown you. So we thought this was such a good idea that we wrote to the editors of Scientific American a couple of years ago, and they said, sure. And we got a cover image. This is the July Scientific American from just last year. So if you can find a copy, you can read all about it. And I decided that this is what the artist did.
How many covers of Scientific American has your work been on, Otangelo? Like any creationist at all, ever? Have you ever been on Scientific American?
Sal Cordova was on the cover of a magazine.
Obviously, that's not like the pinnacle of scientific research. I am being a little bit facetious, but there is a point hidden in the facetiousness. I'm sure we can all see it. Maybe not Danny. He might have to ask a few questions, but you know those damn philosophers.
Wait, well, wait, I heard my name. What happened? I just woke up. Sorry.
Nothing. I'm just giving you shit.
What happened?
I'm just giving you shit.
Okay, we're going back to science. Okay, wake me up.
Yeah, wake him up when the science is over. Non-science? The etymology of nonsense, does that come from non-science? Is it a shortening of non-science? Do you think?
I don't know what turns on that, but if anything turns on that, that would be the etymological fallacy.
They took that image I showed you, they made their own version, and they added something I think is pretty neat. They had our protocells turning green here because photosynthesis can begin. There's plenty of light here, so maybe photosynthesis. We don't know how, but maybe it began there. And then it slowly goes down.
Otangel's going to leap on that statement.
And forms what we call stromatolites, which are the first fossil forms we know 3.4 billion years in Western Australia. So that is the story. And I decided to write a book about it. Got published this month. There it is, called Assembling Life. I'm not really selling it to you. I'm just telling you about it. It's called Assembling Life. How can life begin on Earth and other habitable planets? That's a story I want to tell. And this is for you, George and Rafe. That's one of our first copies. Thank you very much.
Okay. Cool.
So that was just, yeah, it's very interesting, and I wish we could. Looks like all our working scientists are just working, but
Yeah.
Yeah, because
it was
they're
nice
actual
to come in
scientists.
and have an interpretation of what that was. But I'm thinking, to answer your question about all the other items, other than the TMP, or that T chain. I think that was he kind of gathered his components there, the mix that he put into the water from the contents of that Australian meteorite, and then just basically they did a study of what was most likely there during the Earth conditions about 3.5 billion years ago. They went and looked at the remnants of a 3.5 billion year old hot spring that they found in Australia, of all places, Ian Chin. So it sounds like they traveled to the future and got some ancient remnants of a volcanic spring from around that time, and just inferred a bunch, and then put their best guess of a mixture together, and then and they put the DNA together, obviously without enzymes, but enzymes that recognize DNA recognized what they got as a result.
I wanted to point out really quickly, 2 PhD molecular biologists back to back just destroyed what Atangelo said. CRISPR's comment was just up there, and the molecular alchemy came in right after that. Atangelo is again confusing modern biochemical pathways of synthesis for the conditions found on a sterile ancient Earth.
And I got a fucking paper right here on the screen. And Erica just joined us. Hi, Erica.
I came in
there
because
she
I'm
is. Yeah.
intimidated by the prospect of Leo banning me from the
I
side
was just
chat for
about
listening.
to say. See, it works, guys.
You threatened to bet. Oh, cool.
Yeah, threats
Yeah,
work with me. I'm a very excitable individual.
If we had only known earlier.
Yeah, well, I heard we were chatting about original life stuff, and I was just listening along, not commenting, so Leo wouldn't know to ban me. And then I was like, I heard Speed say, I think it was Speed, or maybe it might have been John, or rather Scott. Sorry, but it was like, yeah, scientists just do science. And they don't, like, the vast majority of them, and when I say vast majority, I mean like probably 99.9% of them don't even realize that intelligent design is still like bopping around. Like most of these guys just do science and they don't care about creationism. They don't know that intelligent design, or rather it's not on their radar. It's not they don't know about it. It's not on their radar because it's a BS model. It doesn't say anything. It's not applicable to anything. So, and I always love to the opportunity, since Otangelo so in such a big mondo wah crybaby mode banned me or whatever, blocked me from his so he can't see anything that I have to say. I love reminding Otangelo that
birthday party.
He doesn't have a model. Like his model makes no predictions. His model is not testable. It's just a statement that he makes because he doesn't want to be an ape.
You want to know what else? He said that when somebody asked him, well, how did God create life? He says, well, I don't need to have an explanation for the explanation. I just need to know.
I saw that, yeah.
And so we're like, oh, well, then we don't need to explain abiogenesis. We can just, nature did it. We don't need to explain how. It's just nature did it. And he doesn't get. He just
said in the side chat, Leo, he goes, the model is intelligence. That tells me how little he knows about like what actual
science does. It's not just even that. It's like basic critical thinking, right? Because that's actually an interesting kind of claim. And the question you can ask is, when have you seen intelligence itself, right? Nothing else attached to intelligence.
Just pure
right?
intelligence. Yeah.
It's just
No.
not like he doesn't know what a model is. He doesn't know what like the definition within applicable science. What is a model? What is a model supposed to do? If you think
I mean-
intelligence is a model, then you don't know what a model is.
Okay, in fairness, though, like a lot of undergraduates I can ask probably can't give you a very good answer to that question either.
That's
Right.
fair enough, but a lot of
Yeah.
undergraduates aren't trying to overturn conventional science.
No, but I mean, it's like conceptualizing and thinking about what a model is or should be in science it's nuanced and it's something you really only learn if you get into a lab.
Yeah,
The thing
I
is-
think that's fair enough.
What Otangelo was doing would be like if Einstein never like wrote any, like didn't develop his field equations or any of that and like really put to use things like differential geometry and tensor calculus and just said, oh, gravity? Well, the model is space-time.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. Like, if I seem fed up, it's because I am. Because I've been listening into this stream for the past couple of days while I'm doing other stuff, and every time I check into the chat, Otangelo is saying the same exact thing
I
over
know.
and over again.
Well, look, Otangelo's here.
Oh,
He's
hi,
still doing the
Otangelo. Why are
kudos.
you repeating the same stuff you've been corrected on, my dude?
Oh, here's the picture from the video. So this is the
Well,
paper he
Erica,
was
first of all,
talking
I am
about.
not your dude.
Hey, I
have
believe
a name.
Steve is
Oh,
talking,
okay.
sir.
It's okay,
I believe
Antangelo. You're
Steve
my
is
dude.
talking.
Yeah, you don't have. You can say you're not my dude. That doesn't mean you're not my dude.
That's because
I
he's
just
my
gotta
dude.
say-
You
I
might
just gotta
do.
say
Well, whatever. I want that you call me by my name like I do. I call you
Dude.
by your name. Okay? So,
Can we-
Otangelo,
can
you
we
gotta
call you-
lighten up.
Wait, I've
Can
heard
we-
you use pronouns though.
Can we call you Benny Hinn?
oh
just
yeah,
wanted to
sure, you
say-
can. You have free pass speed. I love it.
Okay.
I like how Foshian Eric was when she said that. Like, why do you keep saying the same stuff? You've been corrected on, my dude. It was very Voshian.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I've been listening too much to it too. Yeah, I have.
So
I have
Erica,
been.
Erica, can I ask you something? You just said that's why I came in actually. You said that we have no model.
Yeah, you
I
don't.
don't.
You don't.
Okay, so basically this. Do we know by experience that intelligence can make blueprints, instructional information, codes, machines, production lines, turbines, factories, interlinked factories, computers, transistors,
Sorry,
all
is this
this kind of
recorded?
stuff?
I've heard this before.
Oh,
I
you're
don't know.
listing. You're listing. Don't list.
So-
Yeah, I
so
I
Don't
finished.
My problem.
So
Yeah.
do we
so
know
the
by
problem with this, though,
experience
by
that
the way,
intelligence can
Otangelo,
do these things?
Well,
Yes.
no, it's
Otangelo,
not experience
you've
that
done
primates.
this before. Like this is like the same song and dance. That's not a model. Tell me what a model is. If you know what a
Why
model
do-
is, just tell
Why
me
do
what it
you
is.
need a model? Why do you need a
Well,
model?
okay, so then don't say
Because-
you have one.
Okay,
So
Here, let me answer that question.
But I didn't say I have one. I just say that by
Otangelo.
experience we know that intelligence can do all these things, and we see these things
not-
in cells and
okay.
in life. Now, explain to me. Give me just one demonstration that unguided, random chemical
Let's-
reactions can
let's switch the
do and
question.
produce
hold on. I
all
have
these
I have
things.
the
I actually
Can
can
I-
give examples.
Hold on,
You
okay.
said in the
Hold
side
on.
chat
Hold on,
that
hold
the
on, hold
model
on.
is intelligence. I'm looking at it right now. You said in the side
Yeah.
chat, the model is intelligence. And then I said, that's not a model. And then you come in and you say, I don't need a model.
So
let's-
call it
let's-
whatever you want. It doesn't matter. The
It
fact
does.
is
Now it
that by
doesn't matter.
experience,
Now it doesn't
we
matter.
know
Hold on,
that
hold on,
intelligence
hold on,
can
You
do
mute the
these
line to get in
things.
here.
Hey,
Hey, hey, hey.
I want to do something really quickly. Let's grant Otangelo his assumption here, right? So let's say that intelligence is the model. Now the question becomes: does intelligence know how to create life from scratch?
We know that intelligence can do
No,
all
that's
the
not the
things
question.
which I listed.
Does intelligence know how to create life by scratch? Yes or no?
So what is life?
Really, Otangelo? Otangelo, I'm trying to take the next step of your question. Does intelligence understand how to produce life from scratch? Yes or no?
Define first what life is in your understanding.
Oh boy.
Life is a self-replicating system that is able to adapt to its environment.
Okay, so do you know of intelligence being able to make a self-replicating factory or machine?
Yeah, it's called a cell.
No, that's not what I asked. Do you have an
Do
example?
you know of
of-
life?
You didn't
No,
answer
no,
his
no,
It's
no,
a
no, no. Let
self-replicating
me
molecule
no,
that
no.
fulfills
Let
the
me
definition I
repeat
met.
my question. Let me repeat my question. Do you know of human intelligence ever producing, or just conceptualizing a self-replicating device as a machine or a factory?
Yes, actually.
Yes, me too. Me
Do you
too.
know
And
of
there
a
is
human creating a cell?
Speed.
there is the von Neumann machine, which is actually a conceptualization of a self-replicating factory or
Mhm.
machine, whatever you want to call it. So we know that intelligence can conceptualize and eventually even instantialize something which is self-replicating. Now, give me an example, an empirical example, where unguided random events can make a blueprint to conceptualize such a device.
I'm showing you the beginnings on the screen right now.
Angelo, the question I asked you was, does intelligence understand how to make a cell from scratch? I haven't gotten a response.
We can conceptualize that.
Okay, I can conceptualize fairies existing in my garage as well, right? I can conceptualize any number of things, but until those things actually find a way to be manifest in the real world, that's all they are. They're in the mind. They're conception.
It's just
Okay, so a
I've
mind
yet to
is
hear
able
any
to
kind of thing resembling a
conceptualize it.
model.
Now, give me an example of unguided random chemicals or whatever conceptualizing a code, information, and then use that
don't.
code to. They don't exactly. That's my point.
Right, but that's not the
what we
purpose
see.
of-
But that's what we
Hey.
see in life. DNA is like a hard disk. It's an information storage device which stores information through the genetic code.
We're
Okay.
just
Okay,
we're doing the
well,
same
Angelo-
thing.
the
They're
thing you're
doing the
ignoring.
same thing again.
Okay, but here's the thing, though. The thing you're ignoring is that life exists because of one fact and because of one fact fundamentally. And that is because of the second law of thermodynamics. What cells
That's
do?
business claim. That's
No. Angelo, have you studied any metabolic pathways, such as, for instance, like gluconeogenesis or glycolysis? Because if
life
you,
store
I'm
genes
trying to
which store
explain,
information. And what does that have to do with
it
the
doesn't
second
need
law
to.
of thermodynamics?
You're over talking,
It doesn't.
Angelo.
It doesn't need to. Life doesn't need to have foresight to build separate self-replicating systems.
That's again a claim.
No, because we already know of autocatalytic chemical cycles that are in coherence with the second law. Right?
That's simply not true. The RNA self-replicating
You said anything about
claim
RNA?
is
Angelo,
just
did I
a
say
claim.
anything? Angelo, did I say anything about RNA in that statement just now?
Okay, so what are you saying?
I'm saying that the reason life is allowed to exist is because of the second law. Is because life disorganizes its environment around it, right? It increases the entropic state of its environment.
Yes.
The reason it is allowed to exist, fundamentally. Now, do you not understand the second law, or do you not understand what cells do?
The second law is contrary to actually what you require. You require.
No, it isn't. Angelo, can you please name me a cellular pathway that violates the second law?
You need to go against the second law.
Angelo, I asked you a very specific question. You said that life violates the second law of thermodynamics.
Well, first you need to actually ask coherent questions, which you are
Angelo, I
not
wasn't done.
doing.
I'm not interrupting you.
Question was asked.
Can you name a metabolic pathway in its completion that violates the second law?
First, you need the metabolic pathway. That's what you require to explain.
Angelo, no, we're not switching the game here. You said that life is contrary to the second law of thermodynamics, which means that life as a system, right, should be breaking the second law at its core. Please show me any pathway that does that. That is your claim.
I can't. This is
Please substantiate it.
Well, I'll answer your question. Give me just a minute, okay?
Okay. I'm not saying it can't exist. I'm just saying, if that's your claim.
So in the meantime, I want to point out the difference between two creationists that we interact with a lot here, between Otangelo and Sal. Sal, who is someone who does work in science, right? He is a scientist. He does work with John Sanford, yes, but it's legit stuff over there. He knows what he's talking about. Most of the time, I disagree with some of this stuff, of course.
Not
but
really.
Sal isn't going around saying that life violates the second law of thermodynamics. Like, he also has explicitly said on stream with me that is a bad argument. And therein lies the difference between what I would refer to as understanding the basics. Now, I don't have anything against Otangelo as a person. I want to make that very clear, Otangelo. But I find it incredibly frustrating, and I would wager that everyone else here does as well, that you'll be corrected on some of this stuff, and instead of saying, oh, okay, let me alter my argument, you repeat the same thing the next day and spam the same stuff in the side.
Give me an example. Okay, give me an example.
Hey, hang on a second. On Cell, Erica, just think about bullfighting for a while and think about Cell. Bullfighting and Cell.
It's funny how people who have actually taken mechanics have, understand entropy, and then people who probably couldn't even define what statistical mechanics is understand entropy. The gap between those two is just glaringly large, and Sal has taken statistical mechanics. That's why he says the whole second law of thermodynamics is a really shitty argument, because if any of these creationists pushing it and understood anything about statistical mechanics, they'd know why it's a bad argument.
That's exactly it. I mean, and I don't know. I find it very frustrating. Like, you've posted the cake recipe thing in the side chat every single day for the past 5 streams.
We talk about baking every day.
Explain to me what is wrong about my cake argument, Erica.
Your cake. Oh. Did you leave your cake out in the rain?
I'm sorry. I bet I'm the only one who's old enough to get that reference.
I honestly feel like it would be a waste of everyone's time for any of us here to do that, Otangelo, because I've heard you be corrected on the cake analogy here on this stream multiple times before. You're still using it, so why would we waste the time doing that same song and dance again?
Okay, here I will quote here how structure arose in the primordial soup. About 4 billion years ago, molecules began to make copies of themselves, and an event that was the beginning. How I want to finish. The beginning of life.
Hold on, we have a point of moderation, Otangelo. What do you want to say, Scott?
Immutable. Didn't you ask him for a pathway that violates second law of thermodynamics?
Let's let him finish that. I'm still curious to see.
All right.
I'm
still sure he was going to answer you.
I will answer him, but I want to answer to Erica first. A few hundred million years later, the primitive organisms began to split into the different branches that make up the tree of life. In between those two seminal events, some of the greatest innovations in existence emerged: the cell, the genetic code, and an energy system to fuel it all. All three of these essential to life as we know it, yet scientists know disappointingly little about how any of these remarkable biological innovations came about. This is precisely what I am saying. You need all these three. You need energy, matter, and information. And if you don't have any of these three, you cannot have life. Now prove me wrong, Erica.
Okay, the thing is, so let's go back to the original thing I asked you for, which was to name a metabolic cycle that violates the second law.
Well, first of all, I didn't come up with the claim that the second law has anything to do with the origin of life or something like that. I don't even know why you brought that up in the first place.
Do you know what your claim was, Otangelo? Because I do.
Yeah, so go ahead. Say it again so I can...
Your comment phenomenon contradicts the second law of thermodynamics.
Well, you need an energy gradient in order to produce energy in the cell. And in order to make an energy gradient, you need actually, like, for example, two membranes, and then the move from protons from one side to the other, which fools ATP synthase. How do you produce that immutable?
Yeah, quite simple. You have a fairly permeable membrane, such as something like lipids, and as cells replicate, molecules that have similar properties to those lipids, like for instance amino acids that have hydrophobic residues, can sometimes be incorporated into that lipid.
Wow.
This has been shown like in real time
And
in
in
hydrothermal
fact,
vents. Like they
happened-
actually have self
You have
organizing lipids.
already started with self-replicating cells. That's actually what you
I
require
think you
to
interrupted
explain.
Erica.
No, that's not self-replication. That lipids don't self-replicate. Lipids naturally are formed, or rather are belched out. I don't know. Mutable can correct me on this. Near hydrothermal vents.
lipids undergo a cycle of forming and dividing.
Wow.
And that's driven
Really?
by entirely physical processes.
Really? Wow.
Yeah,
Well,
really.
okay. But what is
It
that?
is, wow, it is amazing. It's
Angelo,
it's awesome.
Otangelo, is it amazing to you that if you have a concentrated pool of lipids and you introduce it to an aqueous environment, right? So what will begin to happen is these lipids will begin essentially forming a little spherical like structure. And as it keeps growing, what will begin to happen with that structure is eventually the volume of that system will become too large. And if there's more molecules that are trying to get in there, it'll break apart, causing it to divide. This has been known since like 1980s, 1990s.
And observed, which is the interesting thing. But here's my question: should it be should someone be relegated the task of writing down what we talk about here? And maybe me when I'm around. But like, so next time this topic comes up, I can be like, Otangelo, we discussed this already on the 12th of February, Darwin Day, actually. It was explained to you how lipids essentially can self-organize. And then we can move on from that, unless you've like changed the argument. Because that's my problem.
Are you kidding me, Erica? By this completely pseudoscientific nonsense that Immutable just said, I should agree with him. Are you kidding me?
Otangelo,
It's observed. I thought you guys were all about observable science. I thought you guys were all about observable science.
Thank you, Speed.
Erica,
That was me.
I can meet you right in the spot. I can meet you.
Angelo.
Well,
Can we let
can I
Immutable
answer,
talk?
please?
Answer what? Immutable hasn't even talked.
You got to quit over talking.
Insulted my character by saying what I said was pseudoscientific nonsense. I'd like evidence that that's actually correct.
Yeah, I'll give it to you if you let me talk.
Go ahead.
You've been talking a lot.
Well, I am not having the opportunity to actually back up what I am saying. Do you give me the time, Speed?
How much time do you need, Otangelo?
2 minutes.
Angelo,
Okay. Well, that's a lot of time. Try 1 minute.
All right. Okay. Prebiotic cell membrane synthesis. I have many problems listed here. How could simple amphiphiles, which are molecules containing a non-polar hydrophobic region and a polar hydrophobic region, self-assemble in aqueous solutions to form distinct structures, such as micelles, have been available in the prebiotic inventory if there has never been evidence for this? Furthermore, sources of compounds with hydrocarbon chains sufficiently long to form stable membranes are not known. How could prebiotic mechanisms have transported and concentrated organic compounds to the pools and construction site? Third, how could membranous vesicles have self-assembled to form complex mixtures of organic compounds and ionic solutes if science has no solution to this question? Fourth, how could there have been a prebiotic route of lipid compositions that could provide a membrane barrier sufficient to maintain proton gradients, proton gradients are absolutely necessary for the generation of energy. Fifth, how to explain that lipid membranes would be useless without membrane proteins, but how could membrane proteins have emerged or evolved in the absence of functional membranes? Okay, so I have many more points here. If you do not have an explanation to this, then you cannot say that the problem has been solved.
Actually.
No, nothing is simple in biology.
Okay.
We're not talking about
visual
biology.
thinking.
We're talking about pre-biology here, and the very simple answer to your question, because you mentioned about when has it ever been observed that lipids self-assemble under aqueous conditions? Nobody does. I don't know of anybody who's claimed that. Right?
Yeah, that's your problem.
Concentrate under dry environments, and they assimilate into micelle-like structures under aqueous environments. That's an inherent property of the molecular structure.
Okay, what you just did, Otangelo, is called a Gish Gallop. You listed 20 things or 10 things. Anyway, so you listed all those things, and each one of them has about 100 papers associated with, maybe 1,000 papers and books where people have proposed solutions to all of these problems.
Can I chime in for a second, since I've been fairly quiet?
Yeah, Leo, go ahead.
So the only thing I wanted to say is that I would bet, like Speed just said, that a lot of these supposed problems do have viable solutions and maybe even established solutions. But I'm willing to forego all of that and just grant that all of the 5 problems that Otangelo just listed are problems. Okay, so they're problems. What does that mean?
It means that Erica cannot just say, "Oh, Immutable has explained to you that it is not a problem, so now you have to admit it." No, I don't have to admit anything as long as there are no viable explanation answers to just these 5. But they have many more problems in regards of prebiotic phospholipid synthesis.
So may I say something now?
Yep, Erica.
Yeah. So the thing is we're talking about lipids, right? And I said this in the chat, and you start listing what is essentially general abio problems, right? And that, like Speed said, is first of all a Gish Gallop, but that would be like if we were discussing, the ice fish mutation, you start listing perceived problems with evolution, big E, right? Like it's just completely a massive pivot, in my opinion. And what I was talking about was not your arguments against abiogenesis. I'm saying when I listen to you guys discuss the minutia on this channel of, say, lipids or whatever aspect of biochem and abio that we're discussing, or that I'm listening to you guys discuss, you'll be corrected on an aspect of that minutia. For instance, in this case, discussing lipids. But you will then repeat that same lipid claim later on in other streams. So what I'm trying to say, I wasn't saying that you have to admit abiogenesis, Otangelo. What I'm saying is when you're corrected on something that is very specific, just an aspect of your argument, you have to either show that that critique was incorrect or alter the argument in that scope. That's what I'm trying to say here. So in the future, when we're discussing lipids, if I hear you and Immutable discussing lipids, or you discussing lipids elsewhere, I'll bring up this conversation if I hear you say something that has been explained to you before. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay. I've brought up just 5 points why I don't see that Immutable's explanation is compelling. I want answers to these questions, and I have many more. Once these questions have been answered, then maybe I grant you. Can I finish, please? Then I maybe grant you. Then I grant. Well. If I cannot talk, I'm leaving. Erica was talking. Nobody interrupted her, and I don't want to interrupt it either. Okay. So now I want to return to the first point, which you asked for an answer. I found the quote in regards of the law of thermodynamics, and I want to answer to you. Immutable. Okay. Life is in any form is a very serious enigma and conundrum. It does something, whatever the biochemical pathway, machinery, enzymes, etc. are involved, that should not and honestly could not ever get off the ground. It spontaneously recruits Gibbs free energy from its environment, so as to reduce its own entropy. That is tantamount to a rock continuously recruiting the wand to roll it up the hill, or a rusty nail figuring out how to spontaneously rust and add layers of galvanizing zinc on itself to fight corrosion. Unintelligent simple chemicals can't self-organize into instructions
Okay,
for
now you
building
can't
solar farms, photosystems, hydroelectric dumps ATP synthase, propulsion motor proteins, self-repair, or self-destruct caspases. In the event that these instructions become too damaged by the way the universe usually operates, abiogenesis is not an issue that scientists simply need more time to figure out, but a fundamental problem with materialism.
Okay,
So
now
that
you're
doesn't.
okay.
Okay, so
Speed. Hang on a second. Speed is getting very patient with you, Angelo. Try to be brief, okay? And Leo has had his hand up for quite a while.
after that, I want to go.
So
Okay.
I just wanted to. It seems to me that Otangelo himself just said that these are problems and he wants answers to them. Otherwise, the model just doesn't seem viable.
Who the hell are you?
I'm willing to grant that, at least for the sake of the argument. But he's positing an intelligent designer did it. Well, I have questions I want answers to. Otherwise, your model doesn't work, such as what mechanisms did this intelligent designer utilize to create life? Just like you're asking, well, what mechanisms were utilized to overcome these problems? So you're rejecting abiogenesis because there isn't an explanation, there isn't a mechanistic explanation for how it could happen. But then when you're pressed to provide a mechanistic explanation for how an intelligent designer did it, you claim you don't need one. That is textbook commission of the fallacy of special pleading.
Yeah.
And I think it is Immutable's turn now.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically, number one, that doesn't answer my question, because my question was very specific. It was, name for me a metabolic pathway that violates the second law of thermodynamics. What Otangelo gave me, essentially, I can compress into saying, life is very complicated. It manages to maintain itself by very unconventional and in seeming ways that break the laws of physics. Although it doesn't.
Yeah, let me talk to Otangelo. I've never really talked to him. Otangelo, are you making an inference from a physical fact to a mental fact?
Well, what I am saying is that we know that intelligence can act on physical things. I can think about moving my arm, and then I can move my arm. I don't know how that interface mind-body works, but it does work. So we have evidence that it works, and then I am rational to conclude that intelligence is a capable mechanism to do things.
Yeah, I'm not going to dispute that. I
change.
agree. Look, I agree with you that the mental and physical interact, and there's no further mechanism for that. We're in agreement. But I'm just asking you, are you inferring mental facts from physical facts?
Well, I don't understand what you just asked. Can you repeat?
Presumably, you're
question,
making an
please?
inference, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, is the set of premises, right? That's to say, whatever's before the conclusion, a set of physical facts, and is your conclusion a mental fact?
No, the physical fact is the conclusion. The mental fact is the premise or the first thing.
Wait, presumably, you want to say, therefore, God. Presumably, God is a set of mental facts, right?
Yes, I am saying
Okay,
that
so your
God or
conclusion is mental.
information. Yeah, I'm saying that information comes first, and information and mental can direct physical facts and physical
Okay,
things and
but your
change.
conclusion is that there's a intelligence that explains the physical phenomena. Is that not it?
Yes, correct.
Okay, but you're making that inference from a set of physical facts, right?
What do you mean?
Well, when you give arguments and make claims to all these people, these good scientists here, you're giving them a set of physical facts. And I can grant the truth value of all of them for sake of argument. So what you're doing is you're giving a set of physical facts and making an inference and having them making the claim that they should be committed to some kind of set of mental facts, namely the set of mental facts.
I start with the evidence which we see in the physical world, and then I conclude that intelligence is the best explanation to instantiate these physical facts which we observe in the natural world.
Right. Now, do you understand that the physical facts underdetermine the mental facts?
What do you mean by that?
Meaning there's empirical equivalence in terms of a physical fact being understood in terms of another physical fact, or the case where a physical fact is understood in terms of a mental fact.
Well, I disagree with you. We have no example where physical facts can instantiate and produce codes, information, translation systems, and then through these machines and factories.
So then you're making a claim of necessity between some set of physical facts to a mental fact, right?
Yeah.
Yes, that's
Okay.
basically my inference, that
Do you-
what we observe in nature requires intelligence in order to instantiate these things.
Yeah, okay. So if the physical fact is the effect and the mental facts are the cause, right? They can't be identified because the cause can't be the cause and the effect can't be the effect.
What?
Sorry, the cause can't be the effect and the effect can't be the cause. They can't be identical, right? Otherwise, you have no cause effect.
No, the cause is the information, the mental state, and the effect.
No, I understand that. The point is that they're conceptually distinct, right? God's intention is namely conceptually distinct from whatever physical facts that follow, correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so that means that if there's necessity between those two, it can't be logical necessity. Because logical necessity relates to identity and only identity.
Well, what I am saying that what we see in nature necessitates mind.
Right, the point is that if it necessitates, logically speaking, you're talking about an identity relation, but the cause can't be identical to the effect.
It's not.
Right, therefore it's not logical necessity that you're speaking of. The only other kinds of necessity.
No, I'm not talking about logical necessity.
What kind of
No,
necessity?
correct.
Metaphysical or physical necessity?
It is an ontological necessity.
Well, if it's ontological, it's metaphysical. So what constraint are you employing to grant that kind of necessity?
Well, the fact that the alternative explanation, which would be non-intelligent mechanisms, simply are too random and too unspecific to instantiate what we see in nature.
Do you know how constraints work? The idea of metaphysical, physical, and logical possibility is that there's some law, right? Given the law, it constrains the world, the way the world is, right? So what's the law that
No,
constrains?
we don't. Information has nothing to do with physical laws.
No,
Like,
the
Oh,
point is that you're
everything.
making a claim of necessity.
does.
You're making a claim of necessity, right? That given these set of physical facts, necessarily there's this set of mental facts. But the point is that if it's not logical necessity, then there's some world, right, in which you can have those physical facts and not that cause.
No, I don't see it that way.
Wait, then it's
Because-
logical necessity, which means that the cause is the effect, but that just that eliminates
Well,
either.
you are confusing me, Danny. I mean,
I don't-
I'm not so versed
Let me
in
repeat, wait, 1 second,
philosophy.
Leo. Let me finish him. So look, you understand that when we're talking about logical necessity, we're talking about identity, right?
No, I'm not versed in these terms, Danny. So maybe
Well,
I
look,
should understand.
let me just explain. Wait, let me finish. Let me just explain it to you. When we're talking about necessity in philosophy, we're talking about identity, right? So bachelor is necessarily an unmarried man, right? It can't be otherwise. And the reason why is because the concepts are contained within one another. But the problem with cause and effect is that the effect, whatever conceptual things that entails, can't be conceptually identical to the cause. Otherwise, you get two
I
effects.
did grant you that. So what's your point?
The point is that it's not a claim of necessity, which means there's some hypothetical in which there's just those physical facts and there's not that set of mental facts.
Okay, can I jump in now?
Sorry,
Okay,
I'm
Dan.
I
Danny,
tried to
you
come up
are
with a point that Danny
talking-
Hold,
Danny, if I can.
Everybody hold, moderator.
I could finish him, but if y'all don't let me, that's fine.
Well, yeah, but what
Yeah,
you're
well,
saying
you're
is
not
going
gonna-
over his head, and I can explain it. What Danny is trying to explain to you, Otangelo,
Okay, Leo,
that
will
you
let
have to
me-
grant there is
Leo,
some possible
Leo,
world in which
Leo,
life can arise without an
Leo.
intelligent designer. That's what
Put him
he's that's what
backstage,
he's getting
pussy.
at.
Leo.
Y'all should just let me finish him.
No. Okay, Demeter may not have that much time, and he wanted to say something. So, guys, try to be brief.
I just did, but then you kept interrupting me. So what Danny
No,
is
you kept
explaining,
interrupting me.
what Danny is explaining is you can't argue that the only way life could ever arise in any possible world is through an intelligent designer, because there's no logical necessity there. You have to grant that there is some possibility that life could arise through purely physical means alone. Even if you argue that those odds are extraordinarily or infinitesimally small, you have to grant that the odds are there, which you refuse to do. That's a problem.
Woof. Woof.
So, Dimitar, how are you? You wanted to talk
Guys, the
something.
philosophical objections are much stronger than disputing all the silly empirical claims that he makes.
Not really. There's a reason why
The point is that the empirical questions are all contingent facts.
Doesn't matter. There's a reason why the scientists work with the empirical and not the philosophical.
You're not understanding.
I do.
It's like saying, look, if someone were to argue that a triangle had 5 sides, and they say that the evidence for that is that there's some cows in the other room, you're really going to dispute whether there are cows in the other room rather than just saying, look,
it's not even related to the point that I was making.
That's essentially what's happened, guys. You don't even realize.
It's not. No, that's not at all what's happening. Anyway, Dimitar, feel free to chime in.
Hi. So, Otangelo, you tried to provide some logic why origin of life it's not possible. Can you summarize just in very briefly?
There are several reasons, Dimitar. One is that cells are factories full of machines. They depend on information stored in the genome and epigenetic information to instantiate these things. Then we have the problem of the natural course of molecules, which is not to complexify, but rather to randomize and become asphalts. Then we have the dilution problem. If life had to emerge in water, in a watery environment, then the building blocks of life, they would be very diluted. They would not be concentrated. Then there is the selection problem. You have 4 specific building blocks of life which have to be selected amongst a pool of many different molecules which would have been around. Then there is the purity problem. You need pure amino acids which can be used, and you have the homochirality problem. Then you have the problem for, like example, the ribosome requires other machines which make the ribosome, and these other machines require other machines to make machines and repair mechanisms, both in regards of the assembly of the proteins like the ribosome and also in the operation. And chance is simply not a capable or adequate explanation to explain all these things. You need information. You need information storage mechanisms which must be stable, like DNA. You require information transmission systems. You require a genetic code or the assignment of meaning, like codons to amino acids. You require homeostasis, an environment which is homeostatic. You require a concentration of at least 10,000 times less inside of the cell of calcium than in the outside of the cell. You need energy that has to be also generated somehow. And I could go on and on. So there are so many problems, and I am just mentioning here a small fraction of these problems, Dimitar. And you know them. You are a scientist. I am not.
So first of so I don't know how to start, but so let's start somewhere. Most of your arguments are just not reliable due to the reason that you just make assumption of something that must be there. And also most of the arguments are based on an already higher hierarchy of life. So you, in all of your arguments, you never mention a very simplified model of life. So require this, it's not a law. So you may have not this requirement if you're going down to a very simple system. And most of the time, that's your particular arguments are kind of diluted too much. So what I'm trying to say that if you're just putting not possible, science always provides you an answer that something is possible and something is possible. Like we saw today, you may say it's not possible nucleotides to polymerize, and David Demon actually demonstrated experimentally that it's quite possible to polymerize. Also, you said about the purity. Purity of amino acids are required. No, it depends on the model. If you have model which is Darwinian evolution, you don't need to have this purity. Simply because Darwinian evolution, once it starts, it doesn't care. It is care what is around, but basically, due to Darwinian evolution, it survives only the complex which possess a specific molecules, like a specific amino acid. The entire model does not, for example, the modern model for origin of life does not require purity of amino acids at all. Also, requirement of something like, for example, let's requirement of genetic code. What kind of genetic code? In fact, you require to have a relationship between information and some sort of structure or relation between the information and function. And that can be done in a very simple system. You don't need to have at the beginning fully developed genetic code.
So can I just answer to one point?
Your assumption comes from the already developed system.
Can I answer just to one point? You said that pure molecules are not required, but Kern Smith, for example, he contradicts your assertion directly. He says, first of all, there is a problem which is seldom discussed. The starting monomers would have been grossly impure. On the basis of simulation experiments, they would have been present in complex mixtures that contained a great variety of variously reactive molecules. No sensible organic chemist would hope to get much out of a reaction from starting materials that were tars containing the reactants as minor constituents. Amino acids are not formed as easily as Lee et al. Claim. If they form at all, they are extremely dilute and impure, as well as racemic. 50-50 mix of left and right-handed forms.
So I can respond to that one. So for those of you that aren't familiar, a researcher, Jack Shostak, has done experiments addressing this kind of thing, because it is a relevant concern that you might have other genetic nucleotide-based systems trying to replicate and trying to essentially compete for dominance. It turns out that RNA, at least, seems to be the most efficient at what it does, for reasons concerning the ability of RNA to the ability of ribose as a sugar to conformationally be flexible, and also just because of how easy it is for RNA to polymerize. So this question has actually been addressed by several researchers. And to address your claim about amino acids, actually, according to various astrological models and even physical samples that we've obtained from them, one of them being the Murchison meteorite, samples from that meteorite have been obtained and analyzed, and surprisingly, in excess of about 90% or so, the amino acids that are present are very simple, sometimes glycine and alanine, and sometimes a little bit more. But they're present in the correct form needed for life, so they're present in the L form, in excess usually of like 90%. So the point about racemization, we know on early Earth that the Earth was bombarded by meteorites at some point in its development. And we know that there would have been a high concentration of certain amino acids in the particular conformation.
So even if you consider, okay, that's a valid argument. So it's quite possible even a prebiotic synthesis to have pathway to one type of left or right type of amino acid. But even that, if it's not, even in that case, it's not problematic, because what Utengelu always try to fail to understand that once you have a selection system, you can select it for whatever it works. It doesn't need to have purity, it doesn't need to have only right or only left or only one or only any kind of. Simply the selection exclude whatever it's not necessary. And this is the entire logic of not just origin of life, but the following first steps after origin of life. So between Terra Darwinia and Luca, there is a huge time frame, which happened so many things meanwhile.
Yeah, 2 billion years worth of activity.
Also, the living systems, I mean, the life, does not violate any law of physics. Neither the second law of thermodynamics or any other laws of physics. There is no some kind of specific law which is embedded in the life, which does not exist outside of life. For example, the second law, let me say, when you have the reducing the entropy, which has been pointed by actually how was his name? This Schrödinger. So from Schrödinger, who is physicist, back in 1944, he wrote down a book. It's called "What Is Life?" And he actually postulated during that time there must be something very specific, because must be something very specific for life, making in a way to reduce the entropy and to make it kind of going against against the disruption and disorder. In fact, today we know there is no anything like that. Simply because living the life does not violate any of those laws. What actually goes forward and makes the life forward in terms of complexification is again Darwinian evolution. This nasty word for some reason escaped from anyone as creationist, because it seems that this word Darwinian evolution and selection is kind of too awful to be listening from, to be accepted from creationists. So Darwinian evolution pretty much explained everything that you said at the beginning as a problem. In fact, yes, we don't have answers. We don't have exact answer how happened exactly. We don't have exact sequences. We don't have exact environment. Even the models that we are working with, several models, one is more likely, another is less likely. Still, we cannot confirm or disconfirm. So this is the way of science. So welcome to the human world. That's how the science.
Welcome to materialism of the gaps, or evolution of the gaps, Dimitar.
Yeah.
Wow,
So materialism. So I want to mention just a few things. Word materialism. It's old kind of word or old explanation. There is no materialism or spiritualism. So if you go back in classical quantum world, you'll see that the entire matter is just a field. And Leo probably will confirm. Everything that we see as a matter is just a field. everything that we can see as a particles is just a ripples in this field. So there's no boundary between matter and non-matter, between spiritualism and between material world. So if you say material world, this is a term used in the beginning of 20th century.
Well, what I mean by that is basically an all-encompassing view where someone claims that intelligence is not required to explain all the phenomena which we observe in the natural world and in special in life. That's what I am referring to.
Yeah,
But
it's
that's-
not required. Yeah.
Yeah, but that has nothing to do with materialism, though.
Well, you can call it materialism or naturalism or physicalism or whatever you want. I think I was clear what I mean. It is a world where an intelligent creator is basically not required.
Well, there's no precedent to assume that.
Why is it? Where is the new precedent that it is justified to assume that no intelligence is required if we have no evidence whatsoever how all
Right,
these
that's not
things
the
could have been instantiated without intelligence and the supernatural power in the first place?
By natural mechanisms. I mean,
Well, that's just a
there
claim.
was a time. Hold
I
on.
can claim Santa.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing, Otangelo. If we were living back like in the ancient Greece world, and we didn't understand what electricity is, it'd be a similar kind of argument you and I would be having about electricity and how electricity is sent from Zeus, and we can't explain it naturally, so it must have come from God. But we actually know how electricity operates and what causes it to do what it does.
Do we know immutable a natural mechanism that produces instructional assembly information to make specific things for specific purposes, like machines and factories?
Natural selection. Yes, that thing is called natural selection.
There was no natural selection before life started immutable.
Yes, there was.
That's just a claim.
Well, do you understand what natural selection is? Or do
Yes,
you just
of course.
agree with it?
Yes, I know what it is. I know,
Then
for
what's
example, that
selection?
I know, for example, that nature would not select 20 amino acids amongst hundreds that were supposedly extant on a prebiotic Earth because molecules, they have no need to actually select group into amino acids which then in a future moment would be used for life. They would just play around randomly, and then eventually, if they would be randomized and become asphalts, and they would be just mixtures of all kinds of sorts.
Do molecules of similar compositions have a tendency to interact with other molecules that are of very similar chemical structure?
No, John, I would like to know, why did you laugh while I was talking? What was
because to me, his bird is walking all over the back of his chair and looked like he was on top of his head a minute ago, and he was humoring me. I mean, plus I'm always in default laugh mode whenever you're talking, Angela.
Yeah, why is that, John? What is the fun when
let's focus on our own conversation.
Let me ask a question.
No, I mean, Dimitri was talking for about 5 minutes. Everyone was quiet, listening what Dimitri was saying.
And then I laughed.
We were having a conversation.
And then I laughed at what the bird was doing.
You know? And now I am talking, and now I am talking, and you laugh. I mean, you
I
always
I laughed at the bird.
I mean, you always do atoms against me, John. You call me that I am stupid and all that kind of stuff. You know, and when I am talking,
he was laughing.
Tangelo, please shut up! I was talking to the bird. Why are you being so mean to me?
Yeah, and you imitate my voice. You make fun of me just because I have a different.
He's making fun of you because.
All right, check it out. I'm leaving in 90 seconds anyway. I came in here to make 1 point and 1 point only, nothing to do with your conversation, Otangelo. In the live chat, Molecular Alchemy post, at Danny. The additional context is that most of the others in that room have tried to discuss the conceptual problems with his ideas before, speaking of you, Otangelo, to little or no effect. And Danny's response to molecular alchemy a moment later was, at molecular alchemy, I wouldn't be surprised. I can count the good reasoners on one hand. So that's what Danny thinks of most of you in that room.
Well,
that
Danny's a
you're not
little
good
dick.
Danny,
I could really care less. I don't ask philosophers for much because
Oh,
it's
right.
usually
I mean,
not.
with the reasoning that Danny puts forward to him, for him to say that I can count the reasoners on one hand is actually a compliment to all of you, because Danny is the most unreasonable prick I've ever met in my life, and his arguments are totally bullshit.
Yeah, it's like same reason I don't go to homeless people for a real estate agent.
Yeah.
So,
Thanks for that.
Otangelo, I have just one question to Otangelo.
Oh, Danny's going off, and his mic is muted.
Yeah,
I'm saying that philosophers study what logic and reasoning is, and I'm saying that John is probably one of the worst reasoners in this room.
He's not in this room, so that doesn't make sense.
Benny, have you ever seen him
Yeah.
making any
See,
He
that's
actually has
illogical.
good reasoning,
sound
Leo.
argument?
You're one of the ones that I can count on my hand.
illogical.
Yeah, Erica's a good reasoner. Immutable is just hit or miss.
Yeah.
And then Scott doesn't really talk. Speed is like a
Thanks.
horrible reasoner.
Hey, Danny, tell me how you really feel.
Fucking Speed. It's the minute he said that. Speed is a horrible reasoner. Boop. Gone. I did want to comment on one thing that Demeter said, because he was accurate when he said that, well, the fact that like all particles like are just reduced to perturbations in a field. Yeah, that's why I'm not a materialist, because materialism is false. Quantum field theory shows that materialism is false.
But yeah, I mean, the question I was asking with Otangelo is that, are you denying like very basic Chem 1 principles that molecules of similar compositions assimilate and interact with each other based upon their composition and structure?
Well, why should amino acids, when there were hundreds around on the prebiotic Earth, group to 20 specific ones which are useful for proteins, which actually is the best composition according to scientific investigation to make a
Yeah, I have
molecular
an
chain
answer.
of protein. Why would nature select this specific set of amino acids and in special left-handed ones?
I can give an answer to that. And part
No,
of the
you
reason
can't.
that
No, you
Yes.
can't,
well,
because science
Otangelo, I'm
can't.
not going to
How
do
would
it.
you
You
know
don't
when it
know
has
more
to
than
give
You have to
science.
interrupting me.
You interrupt me too when I'm talking, so
Yeah,
No,
because
I'm
you
that's
trying
one-handed.
to clarify, Otangelo, what your question is so I know how to respond to it. But to answer part of your question, since you assert that I can't answer it, and I've been answering you for about an hour now, is part of that reason is if you consider the alternative to L-amino acids, which are amino acids. So amino acids that differ in the way that they in the way that they're stereochemically aligned. It turns out to be the case that if you try and form peptides with these compounds, by and large, they're not very stable. The way that they are positioned, so the way they're the way they differ from their cousins, the L-amino acids, makes it so that they cannot form very stable structures. So logically, what you can say from that is, number one, those structures, those peptides that any D-amino acids may join into and try to form, aren't going to be very stable. They're going to be susceptible to degradation, and over time, you're going to have more L-amino acids produced. Now, to answer your first question, why does nature only use 20? Well, there's a limit to what chemistry can do. There's a limit to what basic chemistry can accomplish, and part of that is, in chemistry, if you want to add more carbons to things, that's sometimes a difficult thing to ask of nature. So you should expect that the amino acids that you do have are kind of limited. And they are. In fact, all the amino acids that we have are alpha amino acids, meaning that there is one space in between there's one carbon spacing the amine group from the carboxyl group. And part of the reason that they are formed is they're the product of very simple chemical reactions. It's not to say you can't have other types of amino acids like D amino acids or beta amino acids, which are amino acids that have two carbons spacing the amine and the carboxyl group. But that type of compound, more than likely, is going to be more energetic, is going to require more energy to form. So it's probably not going to show up in as much abundance as molecules that are simpler to form, on the basis of how much energy is available to the system to try and form them.
So let me answer to that. Amino acids used for life have amino groups and carboxyl groups. To form a chain, it is necessary to have the reaction of bifunctional monomers, that is, molecules with two functional groups so they can combine with two others. If an unifunctional monomer with only one functional group reacts with the end of the chain can grow no further at this end. If only a small fraction of unifunctional molecules were present, long polymers could not form. But all prebiotic simulation experiments produce at least 3 times more unifunctional molecules than bifunctional molecules. So this is a big problem.
Good. So all that's saying is that the environments and experiments that have been used to simulate how these peptides may grow, right? It isn't conducive to the types of molecules that are conducive for life. If you change the environment in which these chemical reactions are occurring, potentially you can bias the system in such a way that it favors the formation of linear peptides.
Where is your evidence that this is possible?
Where's the evidence that this is possible? Experiments that are experiments by Deemer and several other people that are essentially showing if you subject a system to continuous wet-dry cycles, part of what you get is linear growth.
Okay, show me that paper where only amino acids have been produced with both the amino and the carboxyl groups, excluding those where just one group was present.
I mean, if you're asking about various synthetic pathways for how amino acids have formed,
is he talking about homochirality?
Yeah, one resource I can point you to is the work of John Sutherland, who is a PhD organic chemist. Sutherland works with a type of chemical system which he's coined cyanosulfidic chemistry, and he explains how this basic cyanide derivative molecule reacts to form all sorts of different things. It can form lipids, it forms nucleotides, and it appears to form some amino acids.
So has it produced only bifunctional molecules and amino acids?
It forms nucleotides. I believe so.
Okay, when you know, then you let me know.
Let me intervene.
I mean, I'm not gonna give you some of the material. I mean, if you're as curious about this information as anybody else is, I mean, I've given you the name of the researcher.
No, you are making the claim, so you back it up. You show me the paper and where he shows by experiment that it is possible to make bifunctional amino acids only, and that in these experiments the unifunctional amino acids were not produced. And then you have a case.
So, here.
Yeah, go ahead.
First of all, Otangelo, you're provoking different model. You immediately insist totally different concept. You didn't get it. It's not about smashing amino acid and those amino acid to get some function. It's not about that. I mean, you can make all kinds of different peptides and all of that might have some function. In fact, there is a huge study about short peptides. So peptides can do many things. It depends what kind of amino acid contains. But origin of life does not postulate that you go and just smash so many amino acids and make a life. Initially, you don't need even all of the amino acids. So initially, the life could start just with a few amino acids. And only the selection process actually select a specific amino acid that will start to build up the system which is more stable. You just
So
by
has this
asking,
been demonstrated? Has this been demonstrated, Dimitri, or is it just a hypothesis?
it was demonstrated just several times how more stable could be RNA and peptide complex just by having some of the positively charged amino acids like histidine, arginine, and ornithine, which is not natural amino acid. So it was very clear demonstration peptides how when interacts with RNA you have more stable forms. So and
So
there's
what?
different studies by different ways just to show that, for example, just double glycine might have some polymerase function. And such as like this. So you may have many different functions just from short peptides. So simply you provoke different concept immediately, which is not correct, and the scientist doesn't work in this way.
So Dimitri, have you studied ribosome biogenesis?
I have in mind several papers about biogenesis of ribosomes. So what you're
Okay.
trying to say here?
Well, I am studying it right now, and I am sure that I will require a very, very long time to actually even understand all the technicality of how ribosomes are made. But some concepts are being standing out and which I understood already. And I mean, we have not discussed this before. And I will ask you the same question which I asked yesterday at David Neff's channel. And the answer which I received from Immutable and David Neff and Leo actually astonished me. And I can ask the same thing. You know that each ribosomal RNA and ribosomal proteins, before they are incorporated in the maturation of the ribosome, they are going through a test drive. Or there are molecules, protein assembly factors, which actually signal and check if the recently synthesized parts are functional. And if they are functional, then they will be incorporated in the maturating ribosome. But if they are not functional, then they are actually tagged, and they are sent to the proteasome where they are recycled.
So in the eukaryotic system, there is a system which is called nonsense mediated decoy. NMD, which is usually check do you have full complete structure of the protein, and is it in frame? Is it the actual protein is actual RNA actually it's in frame synthesized. So if it's happened, there is a lots of feedbacks, and in fact there are lots of repair mechanisms. So I'm not familiar with all of it, but pretty much there is checkpoints everywhere in most of the stuff.
Yeah, that is precisely the thing which I asked, and I made an analogy. And I said, let's suppose that you are a mechanical engineer. Jordan, the guy which I was talking to, he is an engineer. And I said to him, let's suppose that you have to make a complex machine for a specific purpose. And in order to make that machine, you require to make subparts. And then when you have a subpart made, you check it, you actually develop routines where you can error check the subparts if they are functional when they are incorporated in the machine. And if they are not functional, then you discard them, you fix them, or you make other ones which are functional. Now, is that a goal-oriented process? That means, do you need foresight in order to know when the subpart is functional and when it is not functional? And do you need foreknowledge in order to know when the part can be incorporated and when it cannot be incorporated?
So to answer your question, so if we're talking only for the living systems, I would agree with you if I didn't know how the evolution works and if I didn't know anything about the selection. So in fact, everything
Stephanie.
is very well. It will be very well. It is very well explainable from evolutionary point of view. So it is easy. I mean, for example, there are lots of chaperone function proteins. So the chaperone function proteins is just reset the 3D structure of this protein to make it functional. So and that happens everywhere.
So let's suppose that a subunit is coming out from the ribosome being synthesized, and there are some subunits which require over 150 chaperones and assembly factors, which actually bind to that linear protein in order to be transported to the assembly site. So if it's in the nucleosome, it goes to the cytosol. If it is in the nucleolar environment, it is transported to the other environment, and it requires these chaperones. Is that correct?
Yeah, there are lots of chaperones.
Okay. So what happens if you do not have these chaperones right from the beginning? It will happen that the polymer strand, it either will fold at the inappropriate moment, and that will basically struck the cell. So these chaperones, they are actually very important. Otherwise, the assembly will not happen in the right environment. So this is an all or nothing business. Either you have all these assembly factors there right from the beginning doing their job, or the subunit will not be assembled at the right building place.
So that's so you so how to explain? There are lots of very important functions, but you assume and you're looking only from the fully developed from fully developed system. At the beginning, you don't need to have this fully developed system in order to work every single protein to work. Don't forget that this is a process of coevolution of many proteins together. And they always check out everything. So I would agree with you if, for example, if you remove one protein, for example, the entire system will collapse immediately. So there is such a proteins that entire system will collapse, and those proteins are mostly connected with the base in the base of the translation, transcription, and replication. However, all of this is evolutionary very conservative regions, and those conservative regions does not allow changing in any way. However, what you're talking about is a relatively, I emphasize, relatively evolutionary newer proteins, which actually, in fact, are set up, and those are kind of evolutionary evolved to work in this way. Other words to say, they might do another job and they may evolve in a different ways. Meaning they might have a previous function, at least in a domain structures. So to say this way that nothing will happen if you don't have chaperones, it is kind of, you are too overlooking the system. I mean, in fact, the ribosome it's very well reducible. So it's not irreducible response. So therefore, it is possible to be completely well evolved. It is possible to be evolved.
Now, I am taking some keywords I did there, and if I read this literature in regards of the biogenesis, then I see, for example, regulation, checkpoints, proofreading, precision, efficiency, fine-tuning, hierarchy, requirements, orchestrating, exporting, importing. I could go on and on. And these are usually terms which I would say require actually intelligence to set up. all that kind of complexity. It's the same as I, as a machine designer, I need actually to conceptualize the end product which I want to produce and how I can actually make it. And usually the make of a specific thing is more complex than the thing itself. And that's what we see in the cell. The making of the ribosome is actually far more complex than the ribosome itself. Now, these chaperones, what function would they have if they would emerge prebiotically without actually exercising their job to help the strands not to fold? They would have no function. And I mean, also these assembly factors, they are very specific. They have a specific function helping in the assembly of the ribosome. So I cannot imagine that, for example, 500 different assembly factors would be reutilized from a previous function to then somehow orchestrate the assembly of the ribosome.
So here is the core of your actual block. See, that's exactly what it's kind of don't allow you to go into the evolutionary understanding, because you're working on a very highly complicated system. Yes, life is extremely complicated, and this is not a news for scientists. We know that from very, very long time that the life is very complicated, especially when we was sequenced the first bacteria, we saw extremely complicated stuff. Everything is extremely complicated, but this is not argument for not possibility. So you have pretty well understand. We have all of the mechanisms which drives the evolution in terms of mutagenesis, repair, and the selection processes. And also we see a lot of domain structures. If you go and look the proteins or the genes, you see very similarity, how the entire this complicated structure actually is built up from just, for example, 100 domains. So in that case, and also you see also evolutionary difference. So if you go in a simple organism, you see that all of that new evolved proteins actually does not exist there. But you can see the building blocks. You see the basic domain structures.
What does that bird think?
It's a laughing.
Well, no, I mean the bird's been making a lot more sense than Otangelo, but
Why don't you just talk to the bird, Demeter?
So Demeter, do you know what small nuclear RNA is, what they do in the assembly of the ribosome?
Yeah, I had a picture of them up on the screen a little while ago.
Just 1 second, I'll be back.
I had a whole bunch of them on the screen. Did you see them?
was that big long chart that had like a?
Yeah, it was it's a random generator for very small peptide sequences and very small nucleotide sequences. And we're going to put them together to try to find the stabilizing statistics of the system somehow. Haven't quite, not clear how we're going to do it yet, but we're going to do it. So
I hear Leo and Cider and Port. I always forget his first name.
Stephen.
Leo and Stephen are going into the Lions Den tonight and gonna.
I am the lion. I own the den.
Okay.
I am not watching a politics debate.
Yeah, whatever. You fucking little motherfucking little fucker.
I don't care about fucking capitalism.
Whatever. Whatever. It's cool. Whatever.
Who gives a shit?
Whatever.
Biden's president or good.
Whatever.
Well, I have a debate tonight.
Better watch out, Leo. There's a tiger in the room now.
Yeah.
Oh okay. My gosh.
And a bird. That bird is just
that bird is probably getting nervous.
That bird is hilarious.
He says, "Where's Demeter? Where's my daddy?"
And the bird stays on camera. Well, Demeter's gone. Oh my
God!
God!
We're going to get a commentary from Demeter on that video portion that we played.
Yeah, if he was watching it, I think he disagrees with those guys. I think those guys RNA World.
I think that's separate from. I think Hot Springs is a separate class of hypothesis, but no. Now Demeter recommended that video. I got the link actually from him.
He did.
Yeah. So, but I wanted to ask him a couple of quick questions about the relationship between the Murchison meteorite and what they put into that lab setup.
And I'm guessing that because I'm 57 years old, I'm guessing that Demeter had to take a boomer break.
Boomer break. I don't know what that is.
That's when you have to urinate off. Hey, real quick before you go, Scott, I'd come in here, and this is going to trigger Otangelo, but I had come in here just to point something out to Demeter real quick. That Demeter, you do realize that when Otangelo lays his argument out, on whatever subject you're talking about, and then you respond to him, that he isn't listening to you. You realize that, don't you? He's just waiting for you to stop talking so he can go on with whatever script he's using today.
Oh, well, I'm just trying to respond. Whoever is listening, it's listening. So
right. There's people out there that appreciate what you're saying and all that, but I'm just pointing out to Otangelo's not one of them.
My problem usually is that when I'm explaining something very clearly, every next time it continue with the same argument, although I already explained it.
Yeah.
So
that's why I determined that he's not even listening to you, because he just goes on with the same stuff that he says over and over again on all streams. It's like Erica pointed out, he's been corrected on small details that you think he would, repair in his repertoire so that his arguments would get better, and he still says the same stuff over and over.
I want you guys to know that I'm getting paid time and a half now, because we're almost a half an hour over as far as time for the show.
It sounds like Demeter's what's that, a parakeet is getting a little upset or jealous.
Probably
he's usually looking for me when I'm out of the room. So this weekend after 3:00 usually I'm available. Or Monday also, it's kind of holiday, so I also will be available. So if someone want to discuss something.
Oh, we did actually me and Scott and Speed were thinking, since you're the abio expert in the room, we are going to review do another paper trails, as we're calling it, on David Deemer's hypothesis paper.
Yeah.
And that might be something where your expertise and your knowledge could be very well appreciated too.
David Deemer is one of the kind of the dinosaurs, pioneers. He's from the previous generation scholar, which is kind of a field trip experimenting. So he's the main contribution to the science and to the origin of life is exactly pointed out that you need to have a wet and dry cycle in order to polymerize either RNA or proteins or peptide to polymerize. So, and this is his major contribution in the science. And nobody right now can make any feasible or let me say, kind of logical hypothesis for origin of life without wet and dry cycle at the moment.
Yeah, we played that video that you recommended right at the beginning.
Yeah.
I don't know if you noticed it, but anyway, did you see the random peptide and nucleotide generator that I was showing on the screen a couple times?
Yeah, I saw it. Yeah.
We generate as many as we want. Now we got to figure out what the hell to do with them.
Yeah.
And I want you to look at my. I've got like statistical matrices of how many how many of which amino acid and which nucleotide there are, and we have to go over it and take a look, and then we have to generate a bunch, and we have to figure out what the next step is. So.
Okay,
Now,
Dimitri, let me
I-
answer to that.
hold on, Tangelo. I think I started speaking first, but it has nothing to do with this. It's apropos of nothing. But you guys are talking about peptides, and of course, I loosely know what you're talking about, but have no idea what you're talking about because
It's
I don't
about
know.
candies, John. It's
All
about candies.
all I can think of is that scene from that Next Generation episode where the aliens are trying to communicate with them in the holodeck, and there's a cake of one of the crew members there that's supposedly made out of peptides, and they're eating the crew member. I don't
You
know.
got it, John. That's exactly what we are talking about. I misunderstood you. You are actually a great biochemist. So fantastic, John.
Not really, but it's okay.
It was just an aside. You know what an
Dimitri,
aside is?
Dimitri, can I answer to what you just said? I would like to quote here from Kern Smith. He says, if you were to consider in more detail a process such as the purification of an intermediate to form amide bonds between amino acids and nucleotides, you would find many subsidiary operations, washings, pH changes, and so on. Remember Merifie's machine. For one overall reaction, making one peptide bond, there were about 90 distinct operations required.
I thought you were going to respond to him. I thought you were going to respond to him, Angelo.
I mean,
I'm not sure where the 90 figure's coming from, because the way that peptidation typically occurs is a two-step process, and
It's pretty simple.
It's not an overly complicated chemical reaction. It's a fairly typical condensation reaction,
and they form pretty easily, I believe, in a number of experiments. So
as long as the environment's dry.
I don't know where you're going with that one.
Well, I mean, again, I don't know, I do not understand where you're going with this. For example, there are many positively charged amino acids, either canonical or not canonical amino acids. Why, for example, arginine and histidine among them and became canonical? Is this your question? I mean, is that what you're trying to say? Yeah, there is many other. It's simply those was fitted well and are strong enough. For example, arginine is more stronger, saying this way, stronger to interact with RNA than any other.
Fucking piece of shit.
Unless it's not created something else in laboratory.
That's because of the, if I'm not mistaken, and feel free to correct me, but that's because of the fact that when you protonate the group that gets the positive charge, it's more stable than the ones formed on lysine and histidine. Is that right? Or
yeah, and it's also more easy to it's kind of my modern today's understanding is also it has some preferential to GC-RNA binding. It's not super great, but it is significant.
Okay.
In terms of amino acids and the function. So, according to the model that at least I'm working right now with, and at least Dr. Andreas Lupas from Max Planck Institute also is working. But in order to have, so the evolution of the protein is always, I mean, after the beginning, when the life originated, you don't have anything else than just a very short peptide. That's everything you have. And from this short peptide, the coded amino acids, it's initially is just one or two amino acids are coded, meaning there is a preferred place where to be put it within the peptide. But all of the rest of the amino acids could be random. So what is going on after that? So you have just next and next coded amino acid because the function allows it. It stabilizes it better. So you have from short peptide a little bit longer peptide. And this a little bit longer peptide started to fold a little bit and incorporate more amino acids, which makes more complicated functions. Now, once you have a very long peptide, and now this long peptide start to fold, now you can have function which depends from adjacent amino acids, which are far away from each other in the chain. And that's what makes a motifs. Now you have a motifs, and these motifs can be domains, and fully functional peptide is a very long from the beginning, with a beginning and end, and a very in a folded motifs. So if you look the assignment of amino acids all the way, the first amino acid have a function mostly to stabilize RNA. And the next generation have a function which helps to the motif functions. And the last generation of amino acids assigned have a function more that helps 3D structures and the folding structures of the entire protein. So that's how the logic works. Functions must be there. And if you see the entire repertoire of 20 amino acids, you pretty much have everything positively charged, negatively charged. You have fatty,
Polar, non-polar, aromatic.
You have, yeah. So you have all kinds of groups by 1 or 2 or 3 of the amino acids. So they can cover.
Okay, guys, leaving, going to have dinner. Bye bye, everyone. See you next time.
Okay.
All righty.
Bye-bye.
Peace out.
Altangelo, before you go, could I address something?
Yeah.
Okay. Molecular Alchemy had brought up an argument that he said that it's one that he says you were using. Let me give the argument the way he worded it, and you tell me, does this sound like a reasonable description of your argument? That cells are literal factories, that factories are designed by minds, and therefore cells were designed by minds. Is that your argument?
Yes, I put also the information ingredient here because we know that the genomic information and epigenetic information directs the making of proteins and everything, every part which is required for the cell to operate and to work, and all the parts which are required. So that's basically
that would be separate from. Yeah, that would be separate from this part I was asked to address. But I would like to point out that argument, as it is, the cells are literal factories. Factories are designed by minds. Therefore, cells were designed by minds, is essentially a circular argument because it defines cells as being in a category, and it also defines as having the property that it concludes cells have. So you're basically begging the question. You're saying, I want to show that cells were designed by minds, so I will define cells as being in a category that I will claim is only designed by minds. And
okay, first of all,
if you're saying that a cell is a factory, then if a cell is not being designed by a mind, you have then shown an example of a factory that is not designed by a mind. So your argument does not conclude what it claims to conclude.
Yeah, I've heard this argument or attempt of refutation before.
It's not an attempt of refutation. It's pointing out that the argument is flawed.
Yeah, first of all, Donald,
it's a flaw in the argument.
No, first of all, Donald. Well, first of all, Donald, the claim that cells are factory. This is not something which I have invented. This is something.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. It is because you don't understand what an analogy is.
Well, John,
it may or may not have been, but other people have made the same claim. I know that other people have made the same claim, but claiming it doesn't make it true.
Okay, so Donald, I would like to, if you give me 2 minutes, then I will address and answer to you.
Sure. And I know you're on your way out, so I don't want to hold you,
Yeah.
Can I ask you to wait?
No, you cannot, John. I would like
I know, but here's what you're gonna do.
I would like
wait
to
a minute.
answer him.
Just let me say one fucking thing, dude. I'm just predicting that
Start up a dumpster fire.
you're going to go into your argument again, and you're not going to address what. See, he was going to go down the line.
Come on, John.
What?
We all know exactly what Otangelo was going to say. How he's got blueprints and information.
All I was going to ask is if he would actually address the issue that Donald brought up, which was the logic of his argument being flawed, and he was not going to do it. What's that?
Maybe he will some other time. I did what I came here for, so maybe he will some other time. I don't know.
John, you and I both know damn well that he couldn't do that if you put a gun to his head.
That he couldn't do that if you put a gun to his head?
Yeah, concede that his argument is logically flawed.
Well, right. I mean, but that's what I'm pointing at. Like, I wasn't going to ask him to admit that he was wrong. I was just saying I wanted him to address the topic that Donald brought up. The structure of the argument, being circular and begging the question. But what Otangelo was going to do, I would bet every penny I own on it, he was going to go into his argumentation that sells the package.
Well, we won't know now, but you're probably right. And I was expecting exactly that. And if he had done that, I was planning on doing exactly what you did and ask him would he address, what I actually brought up.
I mean, and the thing is like that. See, Otangelo uses as an excuse. Like when you guys are talking science and shit, I don't jump in very often. Usually it's to tell a joke or to ask a question or something. And he uses that as an excuse. Just because I wanted to say one sentence before he responded, then he goes off the deep end and leaves.
I mean, he did say that he was leaving. So, I mean, he does a lot of stuff I don't consider excusable, but in this case, I have to give him the benefit of the doubt. He did say he was leaving. And I, interrupted to ask him to stay long enough to let me do this. Bring this one point up. So, he's got a good excuse for taking off right now because he did say before that was brought up that he was on his way out. So, let him have that one.
Part of it when I interrupted to ask my one question, then I don't have time to do this, and he could have left. I totally accept that. But
so let him
the thing
have
is like. When you came in and you explained that, I understood that, and never had I, I've accused Otangelo of having circular armaments, but I never put that particular piece together in that fashion, and I understood that. Now, the reason I wanted to step in and say something,
he probably did too. He probably did too. And he probably was going to go off into other reasons why he thinks it's true.
Can I finish my thought, though?
Yeah, go ahead.
But I don't know. The only point I was trying to make is, so like earlier, Otangelo and Danny are saying, I have no reasoning skills. I have no because they confuse the fact that they know a lot of terminology. With Otangelo, he knows a lot of terminology about the subject he talks about, but he doesn't know anything about the conclusions. And same thing with Danny. He knows all these big words and thinks he's the philosophical genius. And I understood what you said. I don't think Otangelo did. So it's all well and good to know all the terminology, but if you can't suss the logic out in your mind, then what good is the terminology?
Yeah, and I decided to mute Otangelo because you were trying to get something out and he kept over talking you. So anybody that goes back, if two of you start going back and forth, I got to mute one of you. And in that case, I believe Otangelo dropped on John. So and then he got mad.
Well, the fact that Otangelo did say he had to hurry out, if it was me, and you're a moderator, so you do what you feel is best. But if it was me, I think I would have let Otangelo talk at that point just to get it done.
One of them had to be muted.
And what's done is done.
But the thing is, if Otangelo had started to speak, I guarantee he would have easily stayed another 10 minutes, and he would have went on for like 5 minutes.
He would have talked for another 10. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And the thing is,
You might have found something interesting come out of that, because I understand evolution, and I would have been selecting how that conversation evolved.
Oh, come on,
Just
Dak.
saying.
We've had these conversations, and nothing interesting has ever come out of it. So anyway, we're coming up on 3 hours, guys.
We won't know now.
Well, when
we
Demeter
won't know now. But maybe
question.
another time we'll get another chance at that, and then we'll see.
We will. Okay,
I
guys.
literally was good. If he just I could have got it in like 5 seconds.
I want to wrap this.
I hear you.
Can I say one thing
I
since
hear
I've been quiet for like 15 minutes?
Yeah, let Leo talk.
And literally,
I know, it's like a
there
world
isn't a
record.
single person. There isn't a single person in this room who's going to disagree with what I'm about to say. He would not have addressed the logical inconsistency that Doc pointed out in his argument. What he would have done is rambled on about how, well, a cell has this, and you've got this foresight, and you've got blueprints, and he would have just rambled on about all this stuff that makes a cell a machine, but wouldn't have actually
Most
addressed
likely.
consistency. He'd have rambled on for 10 minutes about all that stuff, but then that it would not have addressed what was brought up at all.
Do you think Danny would have made any
likely.
progress with him, trying to do it logically?
No, because Danny,
I mean-
that's the thing with Danny. When he talks to people, he doesn't dumb a single fucking thing down, and
Yeah,
shit
and he
flies
needs to
right
for
over
him.
people's head. And I, some people might not. I do like Danny, but that's the problem. Is that's where I think that to some extent, I feel like he almost just is more interested in browbeating his opponents rather than actually trying to engage and get them to understand where he's coming from and understand where they're coming from.
I like Danny too.
But yeah, you've got to dumb down the terms that you're using. You cannot use graduate level philosophical terminology.
Yeah, I
and
know he's not gonna.
somebody who's never gone to fucking college to understand what you're saying.
But I really want Danny and Otangelo to get on by themselves, and I want to see where that goes, and I want to see at what point Danny gives up on Otangelo. That would be an interesting fucking experiment, more interesting than any bio experiment. No, almost.
It would be interesting. It would be interesting. I mean, Otangelo has practically begged me to be on his channel. I went on once and I didn't feel welcome, and he said I was welcome, but I'm reluctant to go back on again. But it would be, I think, very very interesting. Maybe I'm wrong. Yeah, I was just going to say to do the same thing with me and see if I would give up on him eventually.
Yeah. Okay. We'll try to set it up with just you two. and then we'll try to set it up with just Danny and Otangelo. And we'll and I think I'm going to time the two things and see how long it goes, because that's going to be interesting.
Who gives up sooner?
Yeah.
So I'm going to be debating.
I mean,
Otangelo. I'm going to be debating Otangelo on mine and Knox's new channel.
Oh my
It'll
God.
be coming out sometime in March, and me and Otangelo are going to debate the age of the universe.
Yeah, I mean, he's working from so many flawed premises and so many assumptions that assumptions about the early Earth that are based on the modern biology that we have now. I mean, I don't understand how. I don't see any way that he could hold on to that if he actually examined it, and he hasn't really, in my opinion, examined it.
You have no idea how long we've been listening to him do that, Dak. I mean,
what, examine it or not examine it?
Not examine
Yeah.
it. So everybody in chat keeps saying that how much they like Danny. It's almost like they're implying that I don't like Danny. What's going on? Why are they doing that?
Well, no, I don't
have any idea. Anyway,
well, Danny is a overall. I'd say Danny is a pretty nice guy, but Leo is right. That he doesn't dumb things down for people. I tend to understand him. Leo tends to understand him. I'm not sure who else does, but I know the two of us, we tend to understand most of what he's saying. But, translating it for someone else isn't the best way to have a message get across. I mean, maybe he doesn't know how to dumb things down. I don't know.
I can give you the entire speech.
I think Demeter probably does as well.
Entire argument of Otangelo just with one or two sentences. So the first sentence is: the life is too complicated, therefore is irreducible.
Yeah.
The second sentence is because it looks like very intelligent, therefore intelligent life is involved. So
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah, and
So
which
all of
essentially
these
boils.
arguments about
Let the
that.
meter finish.
Yeah,
Oh,
so,
okay.
also, I want to say hi, Dak. Is it the right way to say Dak
It's
or
Doc.
Dake?
Doc. D-A-K, Doc.
Doc.
Yeah.
So I never met you in live chat.
It's from a spare phonetics.
Nice shirt. Is this your
Thank you.
latest Hawaiian shirt, or is just?
Yeah, it's a new one. When I bought one for round one and one for round two of my debate with Kent Hovind. He agreed to the round two and then chickened out, backed out of it. So, but when I bought those, I bought a few other ones as well. So I got some new ones.
Okay.
And did you pick up a Smurf and bring her back home last night, Donald? Or
No, haven't done
Smurfs
that.
are blue. He's purple. That's purple dye, isn't it?
Yeah, it's indigo actually, which is why the confusion between blue and purple.
So that's why I gave up too early
Mixed it
on
myself.
Otangelo, because I after discussions, after argumenting, after presenting everything, he continued with the same. It's looked like that we never met each other. So he continued the same story over and over again.
Well, if I can reduce down what the arguments you just presented as his arguments basically amount to is it's irreducibly complex, therefore it's irreducibly complex, and which is a circular argument, obviously, or a tautology, and it can't have come around through any means other than creation, therefore it was created.
well, I put in the chat earlier. I put Otangelo in quotes, saying, "I don't understand certain things, therefore God." That's
Exactly. Yeah. It's all argument from ignorance and argument from incredulity.
I wanted to thank Agnostic Pagan Mom for her comment to me in the chat about she can't wait to see me and Otangelo debate. And I wanted to point out the speed. He was a little confused why people were talking about Danny in the chat, saying how much they like him. I think it might have had something to do with you posted Danny equals dick.
I did want to say really quickly that in totality, intelligent design arguments that are given from the impossibility of abiogenesis, which isn't impossible, are essentially we've never observed intelligence design life, therefore life was intelligently designed.
Whoops. Okay, guys, can we wrap?
Yes.
Anyway, I'm going to check out this Atheist Experience episode, July 15th, 2017.
I did want to mention one thing.
Well, one first. Go, Dad.
I just said, is that when Otangelo?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I just wanted to mention one thing. I did notice that you changed your channel name and you're showing up in the chat under your channel name, but in here you've got Speed of Sound of Gravity. And I wanted to say I think that's a good way to handle that, because new people coming in otherwise might get confused by the fact that the channel name is Answers in Atheism, and people are calling you Speed. Like, where is that coming from? So good job, with the way you handled that, in my opinion.
I had to set up a separate email account because YouTube's a little retarded about how they want to identify you. And so anyway, I have another email account. So over here, if I respond on StreamYard, I'm Answers in Atheism. If I respond over in YouTube, I'm Speed of Sound. So
I'm not finding this episode. I typed in the date and Atheist Experience, and nothing's coming up.
Well, probably something close to it. Maybe you got Robert saying my name too.
If they could provide like a link to it, that would be great.
Oh, if you do an awesome impression, you got to come in sometime, Robert.
Wait a minute. Wouldn't you know exactly what day that date was, Leo?
I don't know. Maybe
well,
not.
If he says, January 17th, 2017, you know exactly what day of the week that is, right?
No.
Oh, all right.
Well, let's see if I can track it down. It's probably pretty close. So atheist experience. Blah 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 blah. 20. What date did he say? 2015.
July 15th, 2017.
2017.
This is why I hate when people like give references to stuff like this and then don't give you a fucking link. Like, okay, sure.
Hey, Mike, where's the Benny Hill?
We need a Benny Hill.
Of course.
But
Well,
he's
he's
not.
gone. He left already.
Yeah, he's gone. I don't know what
Uh,
happened to my Benny Hill.
You need to get Top Dog
Maybe if you
Wah music. He played it once.
Speed. Why are you
Maybe-
making fun of me playing that music?
Benny Hinn music.
maybe
Yeah,
maybe if you
Benny Hill therapy. Everybody needs once in a while Benny Hill therapy.
I know.
maybe
Well, you know,
maybe if you play that in
it
reverse, it'll bring them back.
I could try that.
It cracked me up when he got mad about I did his voice when he was here, when he was just last week. Wasn't he going, oh, that's great. Speed, play the Benny Hill song again. John, do my voice again.
Yeah, he likes a Benny Hill song now.
Yeah.
So anyway,
With all
it
those-
only takes you a while to warm up to it. So I think
So-
he understands that we mean it as, just poking fun. And we're
All
not
right,
trying-
we should wrap up because I have another pre-stream that I need to do before my debate.
Yep, let's get out of here. How do we end this thing? What do you want to say, Leo?
Remember, people, science doesn't have all the answers, but religion has none of them.
Good.
Stay curious.
Okay, guys, we'll see y'all. Bye, cruel world.
Cruel chat.